Hello everyone, welcome to the spoiler talk for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4. Man, I'm excited because this is personally my favorite season of this show. And it's not just because of the Ghost Rider stuff, it's actually because of the actual majority of the season. Because the Ghost Rider stuff is not going to be a majority of the season. Probably because he's too expensive to do. But I love Ghost Rider as well, and I think they handled him fantastically throughout the season. But sadly enough, like I said, expensive. So I wish we had more, but I understand why not. So let's get into this first episode then, shall we? So basically, since the last season, Daisy has been on her own. She now officially goes by the name Quake, and she's going after watchdogs, it seems. And there are a couple of bad guys driving down the road. We see her suit up, which, okay, yeah, sure, why not? It's not really that cool of a suit-up sequence, but you know what? I guess they wanted to add a bit more mystery, and I feel like they had added a little bit too much. They could have had a much cooler suit-up sequence, but I will just leave it at that. Still, anyway, she goes after them. However, they are thinking that they're being chased by someone else. Well, they are being chased by someone else or something else. So when Daisy asks questions, the dude's like, "Help me, please, okay, please." And then he shows up, the car, which gets shot by a rocket and flips in the air, does a nice old front flip, turns into flame, and who comes out? It is your boy Ghost Rider. Man, for the last couple of years, I've heard people say we need Ghost Rider in the MCU. We had Ghost Rider in the MCU. You people just don't count it. That doesn't mean we didn't have it already. You want to see Ghost Rider in the MCU? You watch season 4 of this show, because man, is it good. But he basically arrives, kills almost everyone except for one guy that he takes with him, and later on we learned that there was someone else who survived, but don't worry, he'll die later. But he takes the one guy with him and drives off. Meanwhile, Mac and Coulson are getting called back by Melinda May to HQ, which they don't know earlier, but it's because of the fact that apparently there's been talk about a Ghost Rider. However, the guy that survived and wasn't taken, he also mentioned a girl, and Coulson and Mac, they have been pulled off of the Daisy case because in a way that they are too close. And maybe if she had something to do with the dead bodies, the new people who are involved, who are gonna be searching for her, might actually kill her in that sense. However, May gives Coulson the information anyway, and Coulson does what Coulson does. He defies orders and goes after him because we have a new director, which we already saw in Slingshot, but we're gonna pretend like we haven't yet. Nobody likes him though. Nobody likes him. Nobody likes the new director, which is a sad deal. So Daisy goes to the hospital to visit the survivor, and he's basically gives not really a lot of information outside of the fact that when the Ghost Rider burns you, you die. Simple as that. And the dude collapses on the floor because Ghost Rider will kill. And man, Ghost Rider is so cool. I love this season. Meanwhile, Fitz and Simmons are working on a simulator together called the Framework. Not something that will come back later. Don't you worry about that one. However, Simmons is a little bit too high, so the things need to be adjusted so that she can be on the ground. And also, we learned that Simmons got a promotion, and also Fitz has a new hand for Coulson. But yeah, Simmons got a promotion. I don't know what her promotion is called because it's too much for me. However, she got a promotion, and the only thing that I do know is the fact that she is above Melinda May. And also, we're now apparently working with colors instead of codes. We're working with the rainbow, boys. Don't you worry about that one, because Simmons is orange and May is red, apparently. And that means that orange, because it's both yellow and red, it's above both of those colors. Yeah, don't ask me to explain it anymore. That's the explanation that I'll give, okay? It's a little bit confusing, but whatever. Anyway, Coulson and Mac, they go over to the location, and they also check up on Yo-Yo as well, because that is the only way that they're able to make the mission look legit. So after that little checkup, everyone is gonna go after a truck that was stolen, a yellow truck, which had a box inside that is very powerful. Let's just say that, because this is technically, I think, if I remember correctly, a two-parter episode. So Fitz was invited by Radcliffe, and sadly enough, Simmons can't come, so he goes alone, and he meets Ada, who is also not gonna be very important in this season, sadly enough. Kinda wish she was a little bit more important in this season, but oh well, we got Ghost Rider. Anyway, yeah, Radcliffe wants Fitz to help him with Ada, because she's kind of gonna become a little bit like Ultron, because they use basically the same lines as the Ultron thing, a shield around the world. Like, that was basically Ultron. That's the whole point of Ada. But then, not AI. That's what he says. Ada is just mimicking humans, and it's not actually an AI. So that means it should be safe, right? Right? Really? No? Okay. Yeah, technology. Also, Yo-Yo has been working with Daisy, as we also saw in the slingshot thing. That was their first meetup, and after that, apparently, they've been in regular contact with each other. I mean, understandable. They are secret warriors after all. But apparently, Yo-Yo gives Daisy some info, and also gives her some pills for her bones, because apparently when she first used her powers, her bones cracked, and she's still kind of suffering from that. Also, I like how Melinda May is like, I don't like it that you have more power than me, and Simmons is just like, well, only most of the time, you know, it's like 90% of the time I have more power than you, but outside of that, you know, the other 10%, you're more powerful than me. I like that. It's like, okay, cool. So Coulson and Mac arrive at the truck. However, it turns out that the dudes in the back are dead, sadly enough, and we don't know why, but I can tell you it wasn't Ghost Rider. Also, Fitz will work with Radcliffe as long as Simmons doesn't know, because of her high position and the fact that she has to tell it. So it's best if she does not know. And the thing that was inside was a mystery box that apparently might be able to level the playing field between the humans and the powers. Basically, at least that's what the Asian guy says, who then opens the box and goes insane, and there's apparently a ghost woman as well. Also, Daisy has been searching for Ghost Rider for a bit. She's a nice Merle of Ghost Rider. Goes over to a guy about a specific car that she saw that night, which apparently she has a perfect picture of. Sure, why not? We're not gonna ask questions about that. And she gets a location about fixing a car like that, and she heads over there, and at night she arrives there just as good old Ghost Rider was about to leave, and we learn the true identity of Ghost Rider. His name is Robbie. Full name, I think, is Robbie Reyes, but still, his name is Robbie for now. We shall call him Robbie. But afterwards, Robbie is using the keys, and that reminds Daisy, and then we have a little bit of a fight between Quake and Robbie, which Quake is actually winning, granted. However, then Ghost Rider pops out, and then she's not winning anymore. He instantly shows her who is the boss around here. However, he doesn't kill her, which is going to come back into play later on. Don't you worry about that. Also, the ghost has everyone kill each other, and then Coulson and Mac need backup, and then May instantly arrives, so she was already there because she got bad-mouthed by Simmons, so she's here in order to basically take Coulson back. However, May does get infected by the ghost, but we're not gonna really deal with that because we're close to the end of the episode. So then to end the episode, we learn that Robbie has a little brother, which is going to come into play later as well. And also, we officially learned that May is actually infected by the ghosts. So that's gonna be a fun thing for the next episode. Alright, episode 2 time, and I did not expect to get answers so quickly about certain things. So the ghost lady that we saw in the last episode is looking at a boy in a house, then looking at pictures, and after that the kid gets scared, calls daddy. Daddy comes in, ghost reappears, and the ghost is like, get out of my house! But it's not her house anymore because this family has lived here for a while, and also the ghost then walks through him and he starts, well, going a bit insane. Luckily enough, he does not hurt the boy, I don't think. They don't really talk about it after that, they just say he's taken in, so my guess is he did not hurt the boy. And Daisy follows Robbie around, and also S.H.I.E.L.D. knows about the ghost lady thanks to camera footage from that house. And also, the box was laced with some kind of special thing. We'll get more into that later on, because this is the plot of the first 8 episodes of this season. It's all about this and the Ghost Rider. They're all connected, boys. So Daisy talks to Robbie, and the talk doesn't necessarily go all that well, because Robbie kind of wants her to just leave, and she kind of wants answers, and she pretends to know him. And I do like this interaction between the two. Man, the actor who portrays him, whose name I do not know, Gabriel Luna, maybe? Yes, I was correct. Wow, I didn't even know I was correct. It just threw out a name. It turns out I was correct. But he portrays Ghost Rider, and he is really good in this show. I do like him a lot. And his interactions with Daisy are great. All of them, to be honest. And also, he basically talks more about the fact how, you know, the fact that these people deserve it. And also, he's not an Inhuman. We get that confirmed as well. He is not an Inhuman. So now, let's meet the person who is the head of this thing. Even though, well, technically, if we, you know, we watch Slingshot, and so we know who's at the head of this thing. Anyway, his name is Jeffrey Mace, and he's a nice guy. He's a great guy, but the team doesn't like him, so when the season starts off, we're not supposed to like him. Once he earns the team's trust, that's when we are supposed to like him. That is kind of the weird thing that I had when I first watched this season, because I didn't like him, but I do like him. He's great, and the actor portrays it with a lot of fun as well. And also, I like the fact that he's not a serious guy, because like once he gets to talk with Coulson about the mission, he's like, don't worry about it, dude. Here, have some water, have some nice water. And don't worry about it. I understand, man. I mean, this is close to you. This is personal for you. But that's why you're off this thing, you know? But to be honest, I trust your judgment outside of, like, the personal stuff, you know? Outside of Daisy and May, I trust your judgment. And I do like the fact that he is such a nice guy. I am a big fan of that. He has a secret, though, that will be revealed in this episode as well. However, he wants Daisy because of the fact that we're about to reveal S.H.I.E.L.D. to the world again. However, we can't really have a loose cannon around there. You know, it's not really good for the people if we got a loose cannon. Also, the fact that they go back to being classified really annoys me. So we get the location of where the box was made, which was apparently in Pasadena. So Fitz and Mac head over there because Simmons can't come. Good for her. And apparently it was developed by a place called Momentum Labs. Meanwhile, inside of the Pasadena's location, the ghost enters the lab and she opens up some more boxes and there are more ghosts who pop out. And they each basically say the same thing. That bastard! Meaning that apparently they were betrayed by someone. And also, apparently they've been in the box for years, actually. They've been in the box for years and they used to have families and maybe they don't have families anymore. And, well, at the center of it all are two things. A mystery man or potentially woman, because I don't really think that they actually give like a gender or anything, you know, one of the two. They actually just say prick in a way. At least that's what I remember. Might be remembering. It's difficult for me to make these kind of videos, so remembering everything is a little bit difficult. If it's not in the notes, I don't remember. Let's just say that. And also, we learn of the item called the Darkhold. Now, the thing is that there are multiple Darkholds that exist in the MCU, and just because of the fact that the one in WandaVision and also Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness looks different than the one from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does not mean that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is not connected, okay? That was the thing when WandaVision came out. It was like, oh, it looks different, so Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is gone. It's like, hey, don't be like that. But eventually, Daisy pushes Robbie a little bit too far when she mentions the brother, and so once the guy leaves, they have another fight. And why is it that everything Robbie picks up turns into fire? It's just so weird. Anyway, Robbie, this time without technically the help of Ghost Rider, wins! Yay, he wins again! And he ties Daisy up and goes through her stuff in order to find out if she is truly evil. Because he's like, just give me a reason as he's looking through everything. Also, Mace wants Coulson to give a tour, so he does that. They give a tour to important people, let's say that. Because also, unlike before, S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't have unlimited funding anymore. They need the money from, the government. So this tour must go great, and Coulson has knowledge of the base and everything, so he is able to give the tour better together with Mace. Also, the ghosts want revenge against someone. However, one of the ghosts is like, I'll burn this place to the ground. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Also, one ghost can't even speak, so that is at least a relief. Also, not really, because we don't really know what he thinks, but also, there's already too many angry voices here. One less is better. But he is still swinging his arms angrily, so anger is still around. However, as Robbie is looking for proof, Daisy mentions Momentum Labs, and he knows it. So after that, he looks through the files that she has, and then he leaves, gets into the car, and drives away. However, Daisy's able to free herself, and she blasts herself onto the car. However, she does get knocked off, but she's able to catch up to the car somehow later on. Somehow, I don't know how. Also, May's infection is getting worse, and she basically fights S.H.I.E.L.D. until Mace stops her, and we learn he's an Inhuman. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's something that I did not expect. First of all, I forgot that he was an Inhuman. I knew he had powers. I just forgot he was an Inhuman. I thought it was more like a super soldier thingy. But I was also not expecting it to be revealed in episode 2. But that's the whole point of the new director, because the face of S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to be a powered person. That is basically what it is. But he basically restrains May and, he takes care of her, let's say that, but doesn't kill her, obviously. That's not what I mean by taking care of her. So Fitz and Mac arrive at Momentum Labs, and the ghost is here, the one who wanted to burn the whole place down, since, he wanted to burn the whole place down. Also, the boxes are gone, so that's nice. And there's a little bit of a fight, and also we got the return of Shotgun X. You love to see it. However, the ghost eventually is able to lock Mac inside of a chamber, and now everything is ready to blow. But Fitz can't stop it because he's too busy dealing with the ghost. However, then the Rider shows up, and man, I love the effect that they used, dude. I know it's TV budget, but it's cool, man. Look, like I said, I know it's TV budget. TVs have less budget, but it really looks cool the way that the skin just evaporates and the ghost head just comes out. Ah, really cool. But anyway, yeah, Ghost Rider comes in and he basically burns the guy away. So he's basically dead. Also, saves Fitz and then walks away. And then Daisy arrives and frees Mac and stops him from going after Ghost Rider. So then in the jet back to potentially base, I don't really know. They're just in the jet. Mac is like, Daisy, don't worry about it. We got some bone healing medicine back at the base. And we keep running low on that stuff. You already know about this stuff. And Yo-Yo's been giving it to you. He figures the whole thing out. But I like the moment of realization that's like, so the only person that would really benefit from bone medicine, what we have, and that bone medicine is going low. How could that be possible? I like how he figured it out. I thought that was actually funny. He has this shocked look on his face, and I'm like, okay. I was just laughing. However, Daisy does not return to S.H.I.E.L.D. just yet. She'll do that later on. Also, Coulson wants to know what happened to May. However, sadly not classified. I hate that word so much, man. I hate it. Like, it felt so much better when we didn't have this whole classified stuff in season 2 and onwards, kind of. But now we are back to, like, classified. It's like, oh, God. I hate classified. I liked it when we were more open with each other. But that's the point. You're supposed to hate the classified stuff. But we do see that May gets taken somewhere, nobody knows where, and also Daisy goes back to her van. She tries to start it, but it doesn't work, and then Robbie shows up and he's like, you're looking for answers? I got him. Get in. So this episode, Yo-Yo's at a party and the lights go out and a helicopter falls from the sky, and basically it turns out it is done by the Inhuman Resistance group, who are angry that they need to be put on lists. And let's be honest here, we all know who's behind this. I mean, if you don't, you haven't really been paying attention in the last season, have you? But still, if you don't know, we'll get there. Don't worry about that. I'm not even gonna spoil it. Also, May's not okay. Her vital signs are not looking good. And also, the guy who was infected dies. Also, Mace sends Coulson, Mac, and Fitz to Miami. And Simmons has an idea on how to help May, so she goes over to Radcliffe. Also, we learned that Robbie's uncle used to work at Momentum as well. That will be very important later on. And then Robbie is like, I really hope that the blackout doesn't happen here in LA. And I'm like, why do you speak? When you say things like that, they are going to happen and prove light out. Of course they happen here. Yep, they happen in LA. And then why is it always that when something like that happens, which by the way, it is kind of stupid that the lights go out, but like it's daylight in LA? It's kind of weird. But anyway, why is it that whenever something bad happens, people make it worse by going and looting and rioting and all that stupid stuff? Why can't you just be good people? What is wrong with you, you scum of the earth? Sorry, had to get that out of there because I keep seeing it. The soccer fans are even worse for this one. When their team loses, they break everything. But when their team wins, they set everything on fire. Why? Whatever. You know what? We're not even going to talk about that. Moving on. We also learned that on the way over to the little brother, because of the fact that everything is now down, that Robbie accepted the Ghost Rider because apparently his little brother got involved with some bad people and they put him in the wheelchair and he wanted to get revenge on them. So that's why he accepted the power. But also, he doesn't really want to keep the thing. He kind of hoped that after, you know, dealing with the baddies, he was able to get rid of it. But no, he's not. So he's been getting rid of other baddies, and it still hasn't helped. So now he thinks that if he goes after the people connected to his uncle, maybe that'll stop it. I can spoil it right now, but no, Robbie, that is not gonna end either. That's not gonna work. So we arrive at the brother's location. However, Scum of the Earth is there as well, and they want to get the wheelchair from the little brother. And after Robbie arrives, they want to get his car, because his car is old and it doesn't run on electricity, which is actually kind of funny, because what if an EMP would be used in the real world? I know, electric cars, unless they're set on fire, are better for the environment, unless they are set on fire, and I don't really even know if they are technically better for the environment manufacturing wise, but I'm not gonna talk about that because I do not have any knowledge. I just know that when you put an electric car on fire, that thing just doesn't go out. It's as simple as that. That thing does not go out. So technically, if that happens, which seems to be a recurring thing in America for some stupid reason, that is actually worse for the environment than a regular car. So it's kind of give and take, you know. But what if an EMP were dropped right now? Like all the electric cars would just shut off. That's just something that I thought of. But anyway, they beat up the baddies. However, Daisy has to use her powers on one of them, which the little brother sees. So now we put him in the car and we drive back home. However, Daisy, when using her powers, it got really hurt because, you know, her bones are still not really all that well, which really felt like a non-issue last season that they just brought back just to do it. But maybe it's because of the whole S.H.I.E.L.D. tech thing that they were able to just kind of make that a non-issue, and now it's back because she doesn't have the S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff. So then a gang arrives at the party that Yo-Yo's at, and they're like, there's an Inhuman here and we are ready to kill it. And it's like, oh boy. You know what that means, don't you? And if you don't, that means they got inside of the Accords. Somehow they got intel from the Accords, which we'll get to that at the end of the episode. That's a big reveal at the end of the episode. But anyway, they're basically looking for the Inhuman, and then one guy is like, oh hey, it's the magician guy, because he was able to make stuff disappear, and it's not him. But then Yo-Yo uses her powers in order to take the guns away. Sadly enough, her friend, or ex-friend now, I guess, but her friend sees it and instantly rats her out. What a female dog. Absolutely disgusting. Who do you think you are? So now Yo-Yo is about to get killed, but then Mac and Coulson come in to save the day. And, well, we get the reveal that it's the Watchdogs, because who could have seen that one coming, right? It's the Watchdogs, ooh. But yeah, the Watchdogs are the ones behind all of this, which was entirely expected. I knew that was what it was, and yeah, that's what it is. And Coulson also knows for sure that they got into the list, and they have a pretty powerful person backing them. So then Fitz grabs a couple of stuff, and Mac is like, are you trying to get drunk? No, I just need the corks. Anyway, we're gonna be making a makeshift compass, basically, in order to determine the location of the EMP device so that we can stop it. Meanwhile, Simmons has brought May to Radcliffe, and he comes up with the idea of the only way to save her is to kill her. And I'm like, really? You want to kill May? That's gonna be, I would love to see how she rips you apart, basically, because you can't kill May. But no, that's the plan. So we kill May, we get the things ready, because the only cure is the fact that we're gonna kill her and then wait for her brain to kind of get rid of all of the because basically she is living a waking nightmare, basically. So once that whole thing is gone, we'll bring her back to life. We have to wait a couple of minutes though, and clear blackout. Of course, yeah, of course there's a blackout right at that moment. So then Simmons tries to, you know, do it the old-fashioned way without the technology, and then Radcliffe is like, I have an idea, and he goes and he grabs the power source from Ada, brings it back, and uses that in order to use the clear things, and then bam, she comes back to life. Also, one weird thing though, I know that, you know, I mean, you have two pads. Why did she put one on May's chest and the other one on her side? That's the thing I don't get. Look, I'm not smart or anything, but like, that's just the question that I have. Anyone know the answer? You can comment that down below, because I'm actually kind of curious. Why would she put it on the side when it's literally just for the heart? Wouldn't it make more sense to basically place it over both of the titties and then shock her back? I don't know. Like I said, not an expert, just a random thought that I had. Also, Ghost Rider leaves in order to pick up some meds, and the brother is like, I know about you being Quake, and the I'll keep your secret if you leave us alone. It's the simple thing like that. Initially, I was like, that brother's gonna be a prick, because I don't like him in Fear the Walking Dead. So maybe I'm not gonna like him here, but I don't. That being said, I don't, because he says that. But he's not ratting her out to the Watchdog, which I thought was going to happen. You know what? We still have some time. Maybe it will happen eventually, you know, like I said, this Ghost Rider storyline is 8 episodes long, so we have some time for him to rat out Daisy, but so far he didn't. So yeah, Daisy leaves, and then Robbie comes home, and Daisy's gone. So then Coulson, Mac, Yo-Yo, and Fitz arrive at the EMP's location. However, they are outgunned, but they're not really, because Yo-Yo basically takes all their guns, and then in the stealth way, they take everyone out, and Fitz stops the EMP. And the day is saved, yay! And then afterwards, Coulson tells Mace everything about this, the fact that it wasn't the Inhumans, that it was the Watchdogs, and also that maybe it's time for right now for S.H.I.E.L.D. to come out of the shadows instead of to wait, because things aren't gonna go all that way. Well, we gotta come out right now, okay? We gotta do it now. And he agrees, and he does that whole speech, and then May calls him and is like, it should have been you, and it's like, yada yada yada. And then in the mid-credits scene, we get the reveal that Senator Nadir was the one who was working with the Watchdogs, and also that her brother is one of the Inhumans. However, he hasn't bursted from his cocoon yet. And also, 17 Inhumans, sadly enough, died. So R.I.P. the fellas. So at the beginning of this episode, Simmons has apparently found the perfect home for her and Fitz to live in, and she goes inside. However, it was all a trap by Daisy, but the home is hers. That is it. At least she got the home, but like it was a trap by Daisy, and she is bleeding because she got shot at by some watchdogs, and she has a list of some people from the list, you know, the index, you know, the Accords, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. And she needs Simmons' help, and Simmons is like, no, I can't. And then she picks up a gun and is like, how about now? It's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, fine, I guess. Nice of you to be back. Also, Coulson visits the uncle of Robbie for help. However, the uncle is like, no. But then, as they leave the prison, Mac spots Robbie, and then we have a bit of a car chase, which ends with Robbie crashing into an invisible Quinjet. Not a scratch on the car, though, so don't worry about that one. So there you go. We caught the elusive Goose Rider. Fantastic. So, Daisy is like, okay, we need to put the USB in the building in a, one of the data centers, I guess. I don't know what you call that stuff. And then Simmons just grabs it, gives it to the lady, and walks away. Because she's the boss! And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, right, she's the boss. I forgot, because it's Simmons. You don't think of Simmons as the boss. But she's the boss. She's high-ranking in S.H.I.E.L.D. She's orange, after all, which I don't know what that means. What's the top color? What's the top color? Would that be one of those, like, no colors, like black and white? Is that, like, a top? You know, it's like, you know, like, is white, like, the top one? And then black is, like, second in command, or the other way around, obviously. And then you get to orange, because, like, I don't get how the coloring system works. Look, at least with levels, I understood how the process went. Whatever, doesn't really matter. But now we got a way in, and it turns out, yes, there has been hacking inside of the Accords, and Simmons is a little bit shocked by this. However, it turns out the next target is good old James. You remember him from the last season, that prick? Yeah, well, time to save him, because he might be the next target. So then Coulson questions Robbie about everything, and then he's like, well, so the devil, huh? Great. Okay, you said Daisy trusted him, right? Okay, I'm gonna let him out, and you're now gonna work with us because we're after the same people. All right, so I need you to talk to your uncle and get us some answers that will actually help us stop whatever is about to happen. And since we're going for the same things, I assume you're in, and he is in. At least there's a deal to be made, and it kind of looked like Coulson promised Robbie something. I don't know what that is, but he did promise Robbie something, at least from the way that they talked. So then Robbie goes in and talks to his uncle, and apparently the story that the uncle has is the fact that the people in the picture, they were doing some shady stuff with a book, a special book, and they wanted him to build a machine. However, afterwards, the leader of the operation, I guess, named Joe, he is the one who basically killed all these people or turned them into ghosts or whatever, and after that, the uncle went mad and punched the guy into a coma. However, he doesn't know the name of the book, so now we need to figure that out. Also, while this is happening, Daisy and Simmons visit James, and he will agree to help. However, he can't really get rid of the tracker that he has, because, you know, he wasn't really a good guy, so we're not gonna give him a removable tracker. So then Daisy blasts it off, which, you know, will help immensely. And then she's also like, let's fight back against the watchdogs, and he's like, well, I got something for you, meet me tonight. And that is a signal that Coulson gets after the whole prison talk, so now we need to make a little detour, which Robbie isn't really all for, but we gotta do it. And also, while this happens, the ghost lady, whose name I forgot, I think her name was Lucy, maybe, she wakes up Joe, and she wants to know the location of the book. And I'm like, have you tried a library? That's usually where you find books. At least back in my day, you found books. I don't even know if libraries still exist, let's be honest. With the age of technology, I don't know if books are still a thing. Also, Radcliffe and Ada are testing May to see if she's perfectly fine. Fitz comes in, and he's a little bit shocked about this. However, Ada almost kind of spills the beans to May when she's like, well, you know, most of me is Chinese. Like, oh, wait, what? No. She's from Canada. Don't worry about it, okay? But later on, Radcliffe kind of teaches her to lie, and this is all very important stuff. However, he's basically talking about a lie for good stuff, you know? We lie to her, not in a bad way, but just to protect Ada in that sense. That's gonna become very important later on. Speaking of lying, let's go see what James is up to, because we go down to the storage locker. James opens it up, and at that point, the other storage lockers also open up, and it was a trap by the watchdogs, and apparently James is working with them. So now Daisy uses her powers, and she and Simmons run away and hide. However, James finds them because they're in the only one that does not have a lock on it. So James grabs a chain, and I don't even know if I talked about it during the spoiler talk of last season, because I've talked about a lot of stuff since then. And anyway, when he grabs that chain, that is kind of like prototype Ghost Rider. However, I was always a little bit annoyed about the fact that he was kind of trying to cosplay as Ghost Rider. So good thing that Robbie just pops in, grabs the chain, and is like, steals the chain from him, and now Ghost Rider has the chain. I didn't need an origin story for how Robbie got the chain, but I'm happy that we got it, because now he's complete. And yes, while I will say that seeing Ghost Rider inside of a car is less cool than the bike, I will say that Robbie's still a cool character. So Robbie tells them to leave while he takes care of James. However, he will bring in James alive. That is the deal. And also, having two fire guys fight inside of a fireworks building isn't good. So that building basically blows up, but don't worry about that. Ghost Rider has James, and he brings him back alive. So then, back in the plane, Coulson is like, look, I know you two like to work solo. Also, he's really upset with Daisy, but anyway, I know you two like to go solo, but that's not gonna happen anymore, okay? We're all after the same thing, and we have to work together because of the fact that they're after the Darkhold, and he now knows what the book is, and apparently it's a magical book. And Daisy really wants to go after the Watchdogs, but Coulson's like, no, this is more important, okay? We're gonna do this. We're going after the Darkhold. But first, we pick up May in the post-credits scene, and also Simmons at this point learns of Ada. However, she's not really all that upset, but we do need a problem. So the normal reaction would be the fact that Simmons would be upset, and that would be a problem that we would take in the future. However, this time, that is not the case. Instead, she has a lie detector test tomorrow, and she kinda needs to keep this a secret, so she has to lie without the people finding out. So that's gonna be interesting. So we start episode 5 with a little bit of a flashback where Joe and Lucy find the Darkhold in some random basement, which is kind of weird how they were able to find it when even Nick Fury himself could not find it and all of the resources that he had. However, the thing is, this book is a bit weird because they open it and it reveals the text, but it reveals it in their first language apparently, because Joe sees it in German because he's a German, and she sees it in English because she's English, and that's, or well, American, I guess, but still, you get what I mean, first language stuff. Meanwhile, during present day, Coulson and Mac are there at Joe, and they are asking him the question about where the book is at, and he eventually says, it's where I buried it, and right before he dies, he says, my wife found it, so, yeah. However, Lucy can't use the book because she's all ghostly, so the book doesn't recognize her at all. That's fun. It starts to show the text, but then it disappears, so it doesn't work. However, S.H.I.E.L.D. has an option. We need to take the uncle. We need to get him out of prison, and they do that, but there's a little bit of a problem. Turns out that the prison guards and the war and the boss are infected. I don't know what you call the boss in the prison, actually. I forgot that name. But they are infected by Lucy, which means that she is here with her ghostly pals. So now we need to fight the infected. Luckily enough, Fitz has a cure, but we gotta wait 6 minutes for him to get here. They get the weapons, and apparently they need to stab it in the middle of the head in order to inject it straight into the brain. Also, Simmons has been a bit worried about her lie detector test, and when it finally is, she's doing a pretty good job. However, then she gets the question about the fact that, is there anything that you haven't told us yet? Are you keeping secrets? And then Mace comes in and is like, I need your help right now. Also, in prison, very nicely, we learned that the Watchdogs are being recruited right here in the prison. So that's fun. They all get Watchdog tattoos in the prison. How, though? I mean, is there like a tattoo parlor in prison or something like that? Do you got those permanent markers or something like that? I don't know. However, as we are in the Watchdogs section, I guess, Lucy shows up, and she locks the door and then lets the other prisoners out, all the Watchdogs. So now we need to open up basically the entire prison in order to be able to escape and run. However, when we're in the cafeteria, we're not gonna make it, even though, yes, you are. You could have easily made it. I don't get what the problem was. But, like, they get to the door, and then Daisy's like, you guys go, I'll stay behind. It's like, but you could have made it, though. You all could have made it. You could have just kept running, whatever. She's gonna do the sacrifice and basically kill herself because those are a bunch of angry men. There's no way Daisy can fight them off. Look, I will say this. Daisy is an expert fighter because she was trained by the one and only Melinda May. However, that's still an army, and she's not allowed to use her quaking power. So, yeah, she loses that fight. However, Coulson and Melinda May are able to figure out a way into the cafeteria and save Daisy. And then May is very upset at Daisy for, sacking herself when there was really no need. Also, Mace took Gemma out of the lie detector test in order for her to give him some answers through like a, I don't know what you call that thing. An earpiece. I'm gonna call it an earpiece because I don't know the name. But it through an earpiece so that he can debate Nadir on live TV, which I will say I keep wanting to call Nadim, R.I.P. the boy. We're not there yet. We haven't touched season 3 of Daredevil yet, but man, Nadim, what a character. Can't wait for that season. We're getting close, but not close enough. We got like 3 more seasons to go before we get to Daredevil season 3. Yeah, I'm like super excited. Also, Mac and Robbie are fighting some ghosts. However, Mac sadly enough gets infected, but he cures himself, and Robbie takes care of the ghosts. Also, he tells Mac, look, I'm gonna keep Ghost Rider at bay, okay? Because of the fact that I don't want my uncle to know that I am Ghost Rider, So I'm gonna keep him in. And he also gets a new chain, and I'm like, really? He didn't keep the chain from before? And he drops this chain as well, and I'm like, you prick. You know what? Maybe people who want Johnny Blaze do have a point, okay? At least he keeps the chain. Keep the chain! But he takes out 2 ghosts. However, on live TV, Mace also learns of the prison situation, which is not really the best thing because he didn't really know about this whole operation. So then he's like, look, the Inhumans aren't really a threat. I mean, they technically are, if you really think about it, but not all Inhumans are bad because I am an Inhuman. And it's like, oh boy, so he really went there. He really just revealed himself to the world. That is fantastic. Absolutely lovely. This is gonna backfire on us so hard, you have no idea. So they get to the uncle, they free him, they walk off with him. However, Mac has to stay behind in order to help some security guards who are trapped. So Robbie and the uncle leave. However, then Robbie walked by a cell that he walked by earlier from a guy from the 5th. And the 5th apparently were the ones who shot at him and his brother. And this is the reason why the brother is in a wheelchair. So Robbie's like, you go on, uncle. I got something to do. So he goes over to the guy, he talks to him, and he learns that apparently the attack on Robbie and Lil Bro was actually a hit. They were paid to shoot at them. It wasn't just an accident. They were the target. Maybe not the kill, but they were the target to shoot at least. So then Robbie burns him and walks off as Ghost Rider, which is like, really, dude? You couldn't have just transformed back and then walked? Whatever. You know what? This will be more important for the end of the episode. However, sadly enough, the uncle has been taken because of Robbie's stupidity. So now we are kind of in a little bit of a sticky situation. We are in a big sticky situation. However, also, little thing. Who was driving that ambulance? Like, who? Can these ghosts drive or not? I don't really know. Because, like, sometimes they interact with objects. And sometimes they, like, with the book, she kind of went through the book. But then, can she drive? Like, I don't get how that works. But let's just say she can drive. So then Mace tells Gemma to take the test again. And she's like, I will not do that because I know a little secret about you and the truth about Vienna. And then he's like, okay, she does not need any more testing. And also, May goes over to Daisy after everything is done. And she's like, look, alright, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to be me. And stop it. Because Coulson's never gonna give up on you. And you don't get to decide who cares about you. Okay? So you're only hurting him in the long run. That is what you're doing. And then to end the episode, they are in another one of the facilities of Momentum. And she gives the uncle the Darkhold because she can't read it. And first step, fix Lucy. And second step is finish the plan. Whatever that plan was. And then in the post-credit scene, Nadir has the footage from the prison and has Ghost Rider and Quake, has them on tape, and they are going to be sent to the news. And I think it was actually ABC News, which I thought was actually kind of funny. I think that was actually the news that she actually mentions. But anyway, it gets sent to the news unless you do something for me. So obviously it's one of those things where it's like, what do you want? And that is how it ends. So we're still getting some trouble. We have 3 more episodes left for the Ghost Rider arc, but we are in some serious trouble right now. Alright, it's a new day today for me, boys. And also, when I ended yesterday's stuff, I saw that the next episode was called The Good Samaritan, and I got immediately very sad. Because this is the episode that I was actually waiting for, because it's the origin story, baby. But before we get into that, let's see what happened in the past with Momentum, people. And what Joe did was he built the box, and he was able to use that box in order to create matter out of nothing, and he creates carbon. And Lucy then talks about the book to Uncle, where Joe was like, no, don't speak about that. Also, it's my book. It's mine! He becomes like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. That's fun. And in present day, we learned that apparently from that location that they were at the end of the last episode, Lucy took a couple of things in order to be able to unghost herself. Because that is the plan, right? Unghost herself and finish the plan. So then Daisy goes to pick up Robbie's brother because, you know, he could be used as leverage. Might as well take him as well. And also Simmons gets taken to a secret place that we'll deal with later. And the brother thinks that Robbie is a secret agent, which I was like, wait, what? Okay, cool. Yeah, sure. He's a secret agent. However, Mace then arrives and he's here for Quake and Ghost Rider because he knows Coulson has them because of, you know, the little deal that had to be made with, well, the devil, I guess you could say. Nadir, I think was her name. So he searches the whole thing. And while he is doing that, Robbie in the box is like, no, I can't lie to my brother anymore. I gotta tell him the truth. And we get the backstory. So I'm just gonna go into the backstory entirely outside of one little piece that we learned later on in the episode. So back in the day, Robbie was gonna go racing. However, he was caught by his brother, and then his brother joined him on the race after he got convinced by Robbie. So they were heading over to the race in order to be able to make money. However, they were followed by a van that actually got in front of them and stopped and didn't go when the light was green. So then a Molotov gets thrown in, and then afterwards we have a little bit of a chase, but then a car comes to the side of them and shoots into the car, and that causes the car to also flip because, you know, they get shot to its steering wheel and, you know, flipping happens. And Robbie got thrown out of the car and he died. However, the Good Samaritans showed up and he pulled Robbie's brother out from the car, walked over to Robbie and basically gave him the Ghost Rider power because as Robbie laid there dying, a voice appeared and was like, do you want vengeance? And Robbie was like, yes. So now he has technically accepted the power of Ghost Rider. And that is the origin story. And we got Johnny Blaze, people. We got Johnny Blaze and the bike. Look, it is unknown which Ghost Rider this is, but the actor who portrays Phil Coulson has stated that it was supposed to be Johnny Blaze. And also, what I love about this, let me go into this for a little bit, is the fact that this, even if they use Johnny Blaze in like a future MCU project, it does not ruin anything because this is something that happened to Johnny Blaze, but it doesn't really have to be referenced. Like, they could put a small reference in it, but they never really casted an actor. You just see Johnny Blaze in comic book accurate Johnny Blaze outfit and the Ghost Rider hat. So it doesn't ruin anything. And basically what I'm saying is the fact that if in 2027, during maybe Halloween, they want to do a Ghost Rider special presentation, which a lot of people are asking for, it doesn't have to ruin, in a sense, continuity with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And that's what I love about that. But yeah, Johnny Blaze basically gave Robbie the Ghost Rider power. And that's the end of that story. We know what happened afterwards. He went on a vengeance quest until he eventually got caught by Daisy. However, it does look like that the people that we're looking for are not indeed on the plane. They're below it. So Mace lifts up the container and it's like, yeah, there he is. There we have him. Because, well, he wasn't lying. That is at least a good thing. Coulson did not lie because they're not on the plane. They were below it, but they were not on the plane, technically. So then Fitz comes in and he's like, look, sir, I need you to unredact some files because I need to do that because he is actually looking into iodine, if you remember that from the Agent Carter TV series. And they were apparently also working with some Zero Matter, which is from Agent Carter Season 2, I think, actually, not Season 1. I don't know, it's been a while. But Mace only really cares right now about Daisy and Robbie, even though technically we are trying to stop the end of the world. But hey, whatever. So then Robbie is sick of everything and he wants to save the uncle, obviously. So he starts punching the container door and he keeps punching it until Ghost Rider pops out. And you cannot hold Ghost Rider, okay? So he breaks out and then he goes on a bit of a rampage. And then Mace is like, don't worry, I got him. He throws him away, but then afterwards Ghost Rider comes back and beats him up until the brother says stop. And that is when he stops. But he was gonna go on to beat him up even more. But yeah, even the Patriot himself cannot stop Ghost Rider because he is unstoppable. Because also, what are you gonna do? What, you're gonna send him to prison? He'll break out of any prison that you got and he'll be able to kill. Like, if you send him to prison, he will be basically in an all-you-can-eat buffet, right? Like, you send him to prison, he'll be able to... That's the place he wants to be. That's the perfect place for vengeance. He'll burn everyone to death in there. It's like, what do you do about a character like Ghost Rider? That is the problem. Anyway, eventually Fitz does get the files unredacted, and he learns that iodine line doesn't exist anymore, but it was all bought up by Roxxon. And looking at what we looked at, not last time, but the time before that, I actually like that because, you know, Cloak and Dagger. Anyway, but we have found a location where they could be. So time to head over there, which is a dam. So after a long talk, Coulson eventually convinces Mace that, you know, we need Ghost Rider because the only reason I'm working with Ghost Rider is that he can kill the ghost people. He is the only one that can stop the ghost people. So we kind of need him, and Mace is eventually convinced. Maybe he's not gonna be too happy about everything, but he is convinced for now, and he lets them go. Also, we learned that the hit on Robbie and the brother was actually paid for by Joe because he wanted to kill the uncle. That is also what we learned in this episode. That's the piece of information that I kind of held back until now. But yeah, that is basically the truth right there. And there's a reason for that we'll learn about later on. So we arrive at the plant, as that's what I have in the notes. So I don't know if it's called the plant, but it's what I called it in the notes. However, we can't hack into it because of the fact that it's ancient tech. It doesn't really, it's unhackable because there's nothing to hack. So the squad goes in, 2 teams obviously. One team goes for the power, the other one goes for the uncle. Simple as that. But then Lucy appears, so Robbie stays behind in order to deal with her. And then she's like, oh, your uncle wanted to play God. And he also apparently was the one who started all of this. And as a little bit of a cherry on top, we have the fact that he also apparently ghosted the team because he is he's mad with power. He wants power, but that's more for the end of the episode. So Fitz and Mac arrive at the power location, but they can't shut it off. So then the idea comes that it's an EMP. We should use the EMP in order to shut everything off. The Watchdog's EMP. So Mac goes back to get that thing. Coulson and May arrive in the main room. They find the book, and he tells May to take the book and take it away from here, which she will, kind of. And then Robbie burns Lucy, and Coulson is exploring the chamber in order to kind of shut everything off. He's trying to figure out a way. The uncle arrives, and then it turns out, yep, the uncle wanted power. Nothing but power. And he's like, you people should probably leave. So he activates the machine. The squad disappears, and Uncle comes out, and he has the power to create matter from nothing. And that's where we end the episode. So yeah, the uncle wasn't the good guy that we thought he was, but we got a nice little appearance from Johnny Blaze. Alright, so 3 of the members are gone, that being Coulson, Fitz, and Ghost Rider. They're all gone, sadly enough. So let's find the uncle, shall we? And the uncle basically kills a couple of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. They're not really named, so not necessarily important, but it does go to show that he is now gone, fully evil. So everyone gets back, the ones alive anyway, and Daisy is the only one who actually has hope that the 3 of them are still alive. She does not believe that they're gone. And Daisy has an idea about the boxes, which Mace, surprisingly enough, actually supports. He's like, yeah, okay, let's check the boxes. That might be something that we can do. We can have Radcliffe and Simmons on it also. So then he goes to get Simmons, which let me just tell you right now, that kind of doesn't really go the way that you planned. Also, Simmons was brought to a place where that guy in the cocoon is, and he has apparently been in a cocoon for 7 months. So that is a long time. So then May is alone, and Mac arrives, and he's like, what are we gonna do? And then May's like, we should use the book because they may not be gone. We should use the book. And Mac is like, that is not a good idea because Coulson didn't want anyone to use that thing, but it might be the only way. And then randomly, out of nowhere, later on, Mac just goes rogue. He starts punching his S.H.I.E.L.D. agent out of the way and rides away on a bike and says basically nothing. Also, the brother is sad about Robbie being gone. But I wonder what happened. Well, let's find out what happened to the squad that's gone, because they're not gone. They are here, but they're also not here. It's weird to explain. Fitz tried it, but I'm just saying they're here, but they're not here. And also, as we learn later on, at least the location, they're being pulled into hell. So, that's gonna be a little bit warm. Hope you brought your swimming clothes, people, because, well, actually, there might not be a pool down there. It's just hot. Oh, well. And after Mace is like, I'm gonna call Simmons and see if I can get her back, he goes off, but Robbie and Fitz follow him, and that's where Fitz learns of Nadir and that whole situation. And Nadir is like, I am not giving you Simmons. Alright? Which later on, he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. I got her. I got her. He tells the gang that he got her, even though it's like, yeah, he didn't get her at all. However, something is wrong with Robbie. And what's wrong with him is Ghost Rider, because, you know, Ghost Rider, he doesn't really want to go back to hell. He wants to, you know, stay here. So then Ghost Rider leaves Robbie and goes straight into Mac, because apparently you can just do that. Sure. sure, why not? And Ghost Rider is back, baby. And that is why Mac flipped out, punched people out of the way, and got on the bike and left, because he's going after the uncle. So Daisy gets into Robbie's car and follows, and Robbie also gets in. And they have a chase, which has some funny moments, because Daisy just scrapes the building, and she's like, self-healing car. And then later on, we cut to Robbie, and it's like, it's only when he's the rider, when he's the Ghost Rider, that's when the car heals. The car doesn't heal now, okay? You can see the scratches on the side. It's like, oh, my baby. But also, Robbie is able to give Daisy directions by hitting the car. He just is like, go left, Daisy, go left, and hits the car, and is like, Robbie? So yeah, he can affect certain things. He's not fully gone yet. But basically, we arrive at a warehouse where Mac has been going to town on the people, and there are some people still alive, so Daisy takes care of them, while Robbie goes to talk with Ghost Rider, and they finally meet face to face in a way, because of the fact that, well, you know, he's been a voice inside of his head, but now they're able to talk face to face, and he's like, yeah, I don't need you anymore. Look, Mac, it may not be perfect, but he'll do for now, okay? He'll do for now. He may not be perfect. However, then a deal had to be made with Ghost Rider, because Robbie is like, look, man, alright, you help me settle this score, and I'll help settle your scores, which, by the way, is something we'll never see, because that was cancelled, so that's something he'll do off screen. But basically, he's gonna help Ghost Rider with his scores. Simple as that. So then Ghost Rider accepts, leaves Mac. So May brings the book over to Radcliffe, who opens the book and is like, no, what is this witchery? However, then we get the reveal that Ada, because she's like, I will read it, because Fitz was like, Ada, please read it, and also reveals the truth to Coulson. However, Radcliffe also reveals the truth to May about the fact that, yeah, she's not human. However, she is our only hope, and technically she is just a bunch of processors, so it's not really a human brain. Like, she can't really be corrupted, or so you think. So we give the book to her, she reads it, and we later on see what she sees, and it's a bunch of ones and zeros, but she reads the book, and then, alright, time to get the squad back. So Simmons eventually is like, look, all you people have to leave, and also you have to keep me happy. And then she calmly tries to get the guy out of the cocoon, which works, and the moment that she sees his face, she gets a bag over her head, and she gets taken, because she gets taken back to S.H.I.E.L.D. So the machine has been made to the specifications that Ada has requested, and now she's wearing a couple of gloves, and she's doing something. However, then we see Coulson and Fitz's perspective, and it's like she's creating a bunch of lines in the air, and it's like she's basically opening up a portal, which once it's finished, opens up a portal. And, however, Coulson's being dragged into hell, and Fitz is holding on to him, but Coulson is able to fight off hell, and they go through the portal, and they're back, baby, alright. Also, we learned during the whole Mac Ghost Rider thing that Mac has a lot of pain inside of him, and we see later on at the end of the episode, just in case I don't mention it, but we see the fact that Mac has a picture, but on the back it's written hope, and it's 2006. So something happened in 2006, or something, maybe something happened in 2006, or around that time for Mac. So we got a storyline set up for Mac. But sadly enough, Daisy is going to leave. However, Simmons returns, because Fitz immediately goes over to Mace, and he's like, hey, where's Simmons? What did you do to her? I'll punch you if you don't give me the answers. And then Simmons shows up. It's like, oh, Simmons. He instantly forgets about Mace and the whole Nadir stuff. But like, my future wife, you are here. Fantastic, wonderful. But Daisy also decides not really to stay with the group, and it kind of seems like she's ready to leave, even though technically we're not done yet, because we still have to get the uncle. We still have one more episode, Daisy. Just give it another episode. And Mac, with his picture, he is sitting at the portal location. However, then Robbie returns from hell, and he asks Mac, hey, you want to help me settle a score? So I guess they're gonna go after the uncle. And then to end the episode with the post-credit scene, we have the fact that Ada is making a brain, and oh god, that is going to be trouble. Here we are, boys, the finale of the Ghost Rider arc, and it's a good one. So this episode starts off with S.H.I.E.L.D. having found the uncle. We got the building surrounded, and also he kills one of his own guys with diamonds that pop out from inside of his own body. And throughout the whole episode, Fitz is like, how is he able to do this kind of stuff? Also, Coulson makes a very risky play, and he tells Mace about Ada. And Mace gives Coulson the green light to go in with his quote-unquote secret warriors. Look, man, I know that they're not officially called secret warriors, but I'm still gonna count the three of them as secret warriors. That being Quake, Yo-Yo, Yo-Yo, and Ghost Rider, obviously. And also the fact that Ada will help as well. That is also part of the plan. That's also why he gives the green light. However, after this mission is done, she will be disassembled. Also, Coulson is kind of trying to give Mace things so that Mace might be able to give him answers about the whole Nadir stuff. That's gonna kind of blow up a little bit, but in a different type of way. So the secret warriors, as I'm just gonna call them, they arrive at the building and they need to secretly go in. So they open up a door. However, it's all quiet and a little bit too quiet. So Yo-Yo goes to scope it out. However, there was some water and some material on the wall, and the water activates the material on the wall, which causes the whole thing to go ablaze. So Yo-Yo barely makes it out, even though her arm is a little bit on fire. And then Ghost Rider's like, look, I'm gonna go in because fire's my kind of thing. So he goes in while Daisy gets Yo-Yo back to S.H.I.E.L.D, I guess. Also, Mace called in Radcliffe, and he is very curious about Ada and about the book. That's not gonna cause any trouble. I will say, Mace is a good guy. However, he is holding on to a secret, and even though this looks very suspicious, it isn't anything bad that he wants to do. Also, we learned that the uncle is making plutonium, which is very volatile and can cause a gigantic explosion. So we need to be careful with this. So eventually, Robbie goes in, he finds the big box, and he goes inside. However, afterwards, the uncle appears, and Eli stabs him in the arm to kind of lock him in there in a way, and also because he wants to turn to Ghost Rider, so let's cut that immediately out. And then Eli is basically like, I wanted respect, and look at me now, I am a god, I can create things from nothing. And he's kind of trying to spin it like he's trying to do the right thing, but he's not. Also, to anyone who wants to know about the comic book origin between these two characters, it is vastly different. The whole Ghost Rider thing in the comic books is way different. However, the uncle is a bad guy, but a much worse bad guy, technically, in the comic books. Also, Mace has a plan. He wants Yo-Yo to go in there, and Mac is like, no. But he does get outvoted, sadly enough. So then Mace is a little bit upset with Coulson because, like, what do you want, huh? Do you want to be the leader or not? Because you keep acting like the leader. You keep going on your goose chases. But you put me in charge. What is this? What do you want from me? And then Coulson's like, I want answers about Nadir. Why are you working with her? It's like, how do you know about that one? Well, when we were ghosts. That's kind of when we learned about that whole thing. So then he kind of tells the truth, and he's like, look, Nadir had pictures of Daisy and Ghost Rider, and that would have been bad for S.H.I.E.L.D. So I'm working with her in order to prevent that from happening. However, there's a little secret that he has that we will learn about this season eventually, and that is also why he's doing it. But that is kind of the part that he leaves out. He's kind of making it look like he's doing this for S.H.I.E.L.D. and not really for him. Also, Fitz apparently has figured out what Eli is doing, and he is not creating things out of nothing, which is impossible. He is instead stealing it from another dimension. So, yeah, it's very bad. Which Eli, after we confronts Eli about that, gets very upset about. You calling me a thief? I can create stuff out of nothing. I'm a god. No, you're just an ordinary thief. Not happy about that, because yes, Coulson does go in, and the only thing he has with him is a chain, which is all part of the plan. Don't worry about it, because now the plan needs to happen. They need to be able to get rid of the box. Simple as that. And they need to trap Eli into the box when they send it away. That is the plan. So, we have Daisy, Radcliffe, Fitz, Simmons, and Ada downstairs in order to create another one of those portals that she made through the book. And we have Coulson upstairs, kind of trying to be a bit of a distraction, and then S.H.I.E.L.D. pops in order to fight. And all Yo-Yo has to do is put a magnet thing on Eli so that he can get strapped in the box. And also, I like how every time that he wants to go Ghost Rider, Eli just stabs him. And if you're wondering why Ghost Rider isn't just Ghost Ridering around, it is basically because of the fact that they're once again being pulled back into hell in a way because of the whole materials from the box thing. Also, Daisy is with the ground team, as you could say, because of the fact that she is absorbing the quakes. But that's gonna lead into some problems because, you know, you can only absorb so much before you need to release. So the plan works. Everyone gets taken out. The uncle gets thrown into the box, and Ghost Rider appears, and he's ready for the escape. However, the uncle's right there. So he grabs the uncle instead, burns him, and then the box vanishes. So Ghost Rider is gone. However, maybe not forever. But Daisy's now having a little bit of a problem because she is past her limit of absorbing quakes. So she goes outside, blasts herself into the sky, lands on the ground. However, she lands right where the news people are. So yes, Quake was here all along. And now Mace is going to spin an entire story that Quake has been working undercover. She was never an actual fugitive. She was a fugitive in order to go after the watchdogs. It was all an undercover sting operation. Fantastic. And I like the fact that he goes that route. However, after that, Daisy does indeed decide, as we learned in Slingshot, to rejoin S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh, what a surprise. One of our main characters didn't should leave S.H.I.E.L.D. Whoa. Because, like, the only other thing that would happen after this is if she left the show. Simple as that. And she became, like, a recurring role. If she left the show and became a recurring role, I'll say that could have worked. But, like, nah, you can't be a main character in this show and be outside of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You are part of S.H.I.E.L.D. But yeah, she rejoined S.H.I.E.L.D. That is great. Everyone's happy about that one. Also, Ghost Rider is gone, but Coulson is like, well, the last one escaped, so this one will too. So it's like, oh, hey, Coulson knows about Johnny. Okay, cool. I would love to explore that, but we're never going to. But it would have been nice if we got something out of that, but we're never going to, let's be honest here, because, you know, I feel like with Secret Wars, we're gonna reboot most of the stuff, mainly the TV stuff anyway, within the MCU. So all of this is canon to the current two sagas of the MCU, but like once we get past Secret Wars, they're probably just gonna reboot certain aspects of the universe. Keep certain things, drop certain things, kind of like how the Arrowverse did it after Crisis on Infinite Earth. Also, Mace tells Radcliffe that he's not gonna stop his LMD program. However, it will take place here in S.H.I.E.L.D. from this point forward. Not at his lab, but at S.H.I.E.L.D. so that they keep an eye on him. And apparently an agent went with Ada to the lab in order to be able to find the research and take it back to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s location. However, the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, sadly enough, he takes the controller and throws it in the box. However, that activates something. He opens the door and he sees something, and then Ada's like, you weren't supposed to see that. Kills him. And then in the post-credit scene, we see the fact that she has May. So yes, we are about to have a big problem on our hands, because I will say it right now, welcome to the main villain of this season. And that's all I'll say, because it's really interesting the way that they developed that, and also why AI shouldn't be a thing. Welcome to storyline number 2, the LMD storyline. And here we go. We're gonna get into the real meat of the season's plotline, because Ghost Rider's gone now. Love that storyline that they did, but let's get back to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So, we need to erase Ada's memory because of the fact that she has the Darkhold in her head, kind of, so we kinda just need to erase that. However, that also, in a way, kinda means we gotta kill her, so that's gonna go well. Also, Nadir's brother wakes up, and he goes downstairs, and everything seems fine, but it's not really. Also, Simmons learns the identity of the brother and the connection, and also, Mace starts to take some credit for Daisy's fame because of the fact, like, well, I made you famous. And then Daisy's like, look, I want the Watchdogs. And then Mace is like, no, I want Nadir. Okay, we don't want the Watchdogs, we want Nadir. Especially after learning that the brother situation, I want to save him, because Nadir can't be trusted because she potentially has a connection to the Watchdogs. So we arrive at Radcliffe's place, and Ada isn't really too happy about being erased, so she fights back. That's the robots that are taking over, which, by the way, is a whole joke in this episode. Also, speaking of the last episode that I did not speak of at all, I missed a joke. I forgot to write that down in the thing because I thought I would remember, but I forgot. There was a little joke about, like, Coulson wanting Daisy to be the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. because he wanted an Inhuman at the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., but he wanted her to be the one. And then she's like, only in a comic book, which is actually funny because at one point, her character in the comic book became head of S.H.I.E.L.D. There you go. I referenced it. Now back to this episode. So Nadir has a trip planned for her brother. They're gonna take a walk, which apparently is the signal to the Watchdogs that it's time to kill him. So let's get him to a safe place and kill him. Simple as that. But not really, because S.H.I.E.L.D. is also on the crosshairs of everything. Also, we learned that Ada really just wants to live, sadly enough, which is not in her programming, but it seems the Darkhold has kind of taken her over a little bit. So Simmons goes into one of Nadir's offices undercover. However, the cover kind of gets a little bit blown because the dude knows, and he warns the Watchdogs guys, and then Simmons barely takes the dude out because she finds some glass and just hits him with it. And now we have the phone in order to track the location. So even though it didn't work perfectly, I guess it still worked enough. So Nadir wants to kill her own brother. However, after he pleads with her, she's like, okay, maybe not. You know what? He went into the thing, but he doesn't exhibit any powers, and he doesn't look weird at all, outside of like the normal weird that he looks. So I think he's fine. However, the Watchdogs, the main Watchdogs guy here is not happy about that. Because he wants to kill him. Because he's an Inhuman. He's a disgusting, filthy Inhuman. So they have a little bit of a disagreement about that. However, it gets interrupted when Mace, Daisy, and Simmons arrive because they want to talk to the brother, which is not going to happen. So then S.H.I.E.L.D. is thinking of a plan. However, we learned that Ada has control over her own GPS, which means she's gonna come here looking for the Darkhold because that's what she wants. And yes, she hacks into the whole system. She takes the whole system down. So now it's Fitz's job in order to make sure that the system can kind of work work without a network, which is apparently a backup plan that he had because they get hacked at least once a year, which I found funny. And Coulson and May are gonna go after Ada and stop her. So they encounter Ada, and Ada beats up Coulson very easily because, you know, robot and all. However, we know that May is an LMD as well, as we learned at the end of the last episode. However, it seems like LMD May doesn't really know about that, which is actually smart because that way she'll blend in perfectly. Because I am kind of upset that we're doing May again because we did that last time in season 2. You remember that one? When Agent 13, I think that was her name, or 33 or whatever her number was, but she pretended to be Melinda May. It's like we're doing that again? Okay. Really wish it was a different character, but whatever. Anyway, Ada shuts her off, opens her up, I guess, and I don't know, puts like, activates her camera, I guess? I don't know. Later on, they can view through May's eyes, so it's like, did they activate that, or was that always there? I don't know. Anyway, but she did get a cut, which means she got hit. So, Coulson and her get locked up while Ada looks for the Darkhold, and everything is in absolute chaos because of the fact she also took over a Quinjet, which is shooting at Mac, Yo-Yo, and, you know, some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. So they are also in a wee bit of a predicament. Also, Fitz thinks that Ada is being overwhelmed with emotions because us humans, we had our entire lives to deal with emotions, or at least to learn how to deal with emotions. She kind of gets all of it at once, so maybe that is why she is also starting to become a wee bit evil. Also, Coulson takes down a camera, and then he tells May where the location is of the Darkhold, which is in Mace's office. By the way, I have noticed I edited already a section of this spoiler talk, and every time I say Mace, it sounds like May, so I keep wanting to cut it out because it's the wrong character, but it's not. So Mace, that one, in his office. So, because Ada can see through LMD's May's eyes, which once again, I said Mace, May eyes, I don't know. Look, this is confusing when they are so close in names together. So now Ada knows where to go. She goes over to his office, grabs the Darkhold, and now it's time for the escape. Problem is, Fitz actually was able to take the base offline, so Ada's not in the system anymore, which means that she can't leave. However, then Mac opens the door and just beheads her, just takes off his head like an executioner, which, pretty cool. We stopped her, and now she's sadly enough dead. Well, that was an interesting storyline. It was a one episode, fantastic. However, we're still having to deal with LMD May, though, so we're not done with the story. If you think the storyline ends here, you're kind of stupid, I'll say. I don't want to insult you, because I don't even know who you are, but you aren't really the smartest if you think that this is gonna end it. But at least we were able to keep the Darkhold from Ada's possession for now. Also, the Watchdogs guys get word about the fact that they have to kill the Inhuman from upstairs, which I don't know who's at the head of the Watchdogs, but anyway, they go in to try and kill him. However, his powers turn out to be fantastic combat abilities, because he's able to dodge everything and disarm everyone and just take them out very easily. However, once he sees Gemma, he has a choice: go with his sister or go with Gemma. And I'm like, you're gonna go with Gemma because that is the only logical choice. As you have seen, she is with the Watchdogs and she would like you dead. And now that you've actually exhibited powers, she wants you dead. But no, he chooses to go with his sister, which is like, okay, yeah, that's great. So then they get into the helicopter, they fly above water, and then the deer shoots her own brother and throw him into the water, which actually causes him to cocoon up. If I remember correctly, this is actually where his storyline ends, so guess he never gets found again, but he's dead for all sense and purposes, just dead. And that's it. That is the storyline done. We got the book back, and now we need to put the books at someplace safe, and the location of that book is going to be a secret. Then May is like, you need a pilot, Coulson. And then Coulson's like, nah, I should probably do this alone, which yes, you probably should. And then to end the episode, we get the big reveal that Radcliffe was behind the whole thing after all. Ada did not go AI. She was just following Radcliffe's orders, and sadly enough, she wasn't able to escape with the book. And when I saw him in the last season, I was like, there's something about this guy. I don't fully trust him, but I don't know why. Now I remember. I kind of look, I remembered all the other stuff in this season, you know, Ghost Rider, Uncle, Ada, but I didn't remember Radcliffe going evil. I don't know why I forgot that. Oh well. But yeah, he wants the book. That is what he wants. So we are not even close to being done with the storyline yet. How about a little bit of honesty from our dear old director friend, because we're gonna need it if we're gonna move forward. Honesty is the best policy, as they always say. So this episode starts off with Daisy in the spotlight. Everyone is cheering her on. However, there does seem to be some suspicion going around a briefcase, and Coulson notices that an agent is missing, and Daisy also later on notices it, and yep, they got attacked by people who are apparently ex-Hydra people who are now kind of into the Watchdogs. Also, the director kind of gets shot with one of those bullets that hit Luke Cage. So, continuity, baby, yeah. You remember that from Luke Cage Season 1 when he got hit with that bullet that just drilled inside of him and was eventually going to explode, killing him from the inside out. Really the only way that a bulletproof skin guy can be killed. However, we're able to get Mace and also technically the briefcase out, and we also captured one of the guys who was on the rooftop, so May needs to get in there in order to get some answers. Also, Simmons throughout this episode wants to get into Mace's files in order to be able to potentially see if we can find something in there that could be useful. Also, Ratcliffe is not allowed near the base after the incident with Ada, which Ratcliffe is not really happy about, especially because of the LMD May that is kind of a prototype, and if anything goes wrong, he can't really be there to fix it, maybe. So at the interrogation, we learned that this was only phase 1 of the plan. Technically, it's phase 3, but who is here to count? Anyway, but yeah, it's phase 1 of the plan, and it only had an 18% of success, so now they're on to phase 2. And phase 2 is attack the plane, and they do. The Quinjet's door gets blown open, Burroughs, the PR guy, gets flown out the door, and we crash. So that Burroughs guy is dead for sure. So after we crash, turns out there's a jammer here that jams all communications. However, it's not an EMP, so at least we're lucky with that one, so Coulson can move his hand. And the number 1 priority for Mace is to find Burroughs, because he has the answers that we have all been looking for. Also, Radcliffe wants Ada to stop killing people. What's wrong with you? No more killing, okay? Because she's like, look, next time I'll kill someone, I'll be more discreet. I'll hide the body better. It's like, no. What's wrong with you? No, you shouldn't do that. Also, in this episode, Fitz is entirely curious about what went wrong with Ada. However, Simmons kind of just wants to forget about the whole ordeal. And then May wakes up, the real one, and she tries to escape. However, Ada stops her, and she gets sedated, so it didn't work. And the problem that they had is the fact that they put May in a peaceful simulation. However, it's May. You don't put her at the beach. You put her in an active war zone, because that is where Melinda May is at peace. So Radcliffe changes May's simulation to be a bit more violent. Initially, I thought this was part of her simulation, but it wasn't. Also, Simmons learns that she actually has access to Mace's files, and she's like, I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna read it aloud, unless you, good old Talbot, wants to tell me the truth. It's nice to see Talbot again. The Talbot's like, alright, everybody out. Here we go. Mace isn't an inhuman. Mace is just a regular guy. Literally, just a regular guy. He isn't an inhuman. He's not even a powered person. He doesn't even have training, really. He has the basic training of like, this is a gun and this is the button you press to fire it and this is the kickback. That is basically all the training he has. He has no special training. For crying out loud, I feel like Fitz and Simmons are better fighters than Mace is right now. Which means that Coulson and Mac are now with a non-powered person that they think is powered. So that's gonna be a little bit of an issue. Also, Coulson and Mac and Mace find the transmission thing. However, Mace is still very determined to go after the case, which Coulson has a plan for. Mac and Coulson will go around, take out the people at the back, while Mace can take out the people in the front. And if anything goes wrong, hey, he's got super strength, right? So nothing is gonna go wrong. So Coulson and Mac get their job done very easily, but then Mace kind of ruins it because he doesn't have super strength anymore. Apparently the serum wore off. So he goes for the case, grabs it, runs away. Then he opens it, grabs it, but the bottle gets shot. And then the other bottle later on also gets shot. And he is about to die. He gets shot in the leg, but he gets saved. And then Mac is like, how is this possible? You're a powered person. And then Coulson's like, no, he's not. He's not, sadly enough. He is just a regular human. And then Talbot reveals the official truth. Because of the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted a powered person as the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., they weren't able to find one. They couldn't find one, so they made one. But we need to break the Hydra guy in order to get all the information. So Simmons is like, I have an idea. And she comes in and she's like, alright, you're gonna give me all the answers or you're gonna end up like my last victim, and opens up a case with Ada's head inside, bloody and in ice. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll tell you everything. So we get all all the information that we need and the location as well. Also, there's backup coming and they have the jammer with them. So Coulson has a plan because the fact that they don't know that he is not powered. Mace will put on the suit and cause a little bit of a distraction while Mac will go around, grab and blow up the jammer, and then we just wait for survival. And everything works out. So then Daisy arrives and she saves Coulson and Mace, and also May arrives and she gets a little bit hurt in the fight, which will come back into play later, but she does take out the guy together with Mac, and I'm like, scrawny guy like that, how did you people lose to him? But he was a bit nimble. But yeah, anyway, we got the truth, and also secretly Fitz is trying to keep Ada a secret because apparently he turned her back on, and he is gonna try and figure out what went wrong with her. And she's like, thank you, Fitz. And it's like, oh boy, this is not gonna go well. And then Coulson attacks Talbot. He's like, what is wrong with you? Why did you do all these lies? Like, well, I was expecting you to understand, being a spy and all, that a secret sometimes has to happen. Also, we did this for the best thing that we could, because we literally couldn't find what you wanted, okay? Technically, it is true that Coulson made it a little bit more difficult for them, because he could have just come out with S.H.I.E.L.D, but no. So then Mace is like, can I have the room with Coulson? And then he tells the truth. The photo in Vienna, his hero moment, was accidental, and he actually just slipped. He slipped and fell. He didn't even know the woman was there when the picture was taken. So he looks all heroic, but that's not really true. So Coulson is like, well, you're still a good guy at heart, so this is how it's gonna work, okay? I'm back in charge. However, you're gonna deal with all of the stuff that I hate, like the paperwork. I hate the paperwork, I hate the interviews, and all that stuff. So Mace is going to be the face of S.H.I.E.L.D, while Coulson is really in charge. And I think this is the perfect outcome. And also, to end the episode, the LMD May learns that she is not as human as she thinks, and she might have a little bit of a robot in her back. So let's see when May was exactly taken, because I would personally like to get some answers about that one. And we learned that May was taken, you remember back during the Ghost Rider arc, when May had to pick up Ada. Yeah, that's when she was taken, sadly enough. At least we get an answer here, unlike that stupid secret invasion, but all in due time. Also, they tried giving May a peaceful simulation, which doesn't work if you know May at all. Also, Ada doesn't really understand why we have to keep May alive, and I'm like, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but that's because Radcliffe just wants the Darkhold. He doesn't want to become a villain, as you could say, but well, Radcliffe's a little bit too late for that one, but thank you for keeping May alive. But I understand what Ada was actually talking about, because like May's dangerous, okay? Also, Radcliffe has a second LMD, which will come into play more. I don't really know if it's at the end of this episode, because I feel like it is more setting up something else. It definitely will set up other things. So then the big day arrives. Daisy will finally sign the Accords. However, while she's doing that, Coulson has a plan, and that's he and Yo-Yo are gonna infiltrate Nadir's office and plant bugs there. Also, throughout this whole episode, May tries another escape attempt from Radcliffe, and I'm just gonna say it right now, that is all a simulation. Everything is a simulation, because peaceful things don't work, so we need violence. Also, the LMD May wants some info about Ada, because she now understands that she's an LMD. However, she doesn't really get the info that she needs, because of the fact that there's a little bit of misunderstanding, and also she can't really say the truth at all. So that's gonna be a little bit of a problem. She can't say, yo, I'm an LMD. I want to know if Ada knew everything about what happened, you know? Also, we have a nice moment between Mace and Daisy at the hearing place where she is gonna be signing the Accords. I like that moment a lot. And Coulson and Yo-Yo go in order to plant the bug in the office. However, Nadir knows, which means we have a leak in our system somehow. And when we get back to base, we learn that it was because of Ada. Because of the fact that Fitz reactivated Ada, and Ada used the technology from Deathlock, which I miss him. I will say that. I miss him, but we got Ghost Rider instead. I missed him in the last season too, but we had Inhumans as well, so maybe one day he'll be back again. But for now, we still miss him. But that is how it happened. And also, Simmons accused Fitz. However, Fitz is like, look, I was investigating, okay? Because there's something off about the whole thing. So the LMD May goes to Radcliffe. However, she can't really hurt Radcliffe. Also, Radcliffe is excited about this whole thing. It's like, oh my god, you feel all these things. Oh, it's so great. I love this. He's a big fan of everything. However, she can't hurt Radcliffe because that's not in her programming. Also, she can't tell anyone because that also isn't in her programming. However, at that moment, S.H.I.E.L.D comes in to arrest Radcliffe because Fitz figured it out, boys, that Radcliffe is the bad guy. So they lock him up. Also, you remember that picture from the earlier part of the season when we had Hope written on the back? Yeah, we get the answer about that one, but Mac explains it in the dumbest way possible. He basically tells Yo-Yo, who, by the way, they're in a relationship now, but he tells her, look, I went back to my ex for Hope. It's like, what? Wait, what? What a sentence structure he basically gave her. So she's like, look, I'm not gonna be just some kind of fling, okay? I'm out of here. And then Mac is like, Hope was my daughter. She only lived for 4 days, but we still miss her. And it was that tomorrow is actually her birthday, technically. And I went to my ex in order to support her. That is what I did. And then immediately Yo-Yo is like, oh, I'm so sorry, Mac, I'm so sorry. And then Fitz goes over to Radcliffe in order to basically grill him for information as well. However, the answers that this Radcliffe gives are a bit strange. And so Fitz is like, give me your gun, and shoots Radcliffe straight in the head. Turns out, yes, he is an LMD as well. However, I don't know if he's the second LMD that they're talking about, but I think he actually is talking about that is actually the second LMD. And we get the reveal that Radcliffe is right now working with Nadir in order to get his hands on the Darkhold. And to end the episode, we learn what simulation they have cocked up for Melinda May, the real one. And that is Bahrain. Yeah, you remember that? Good times, good times. She's basically reliving it with a little twist. And that twist is that she does get the W. Instead of having to kill the kid, she actually saves the kid. So, look, at least that's nice. Even though, you know, she's still trapped. And she's trapped in some kind of a weird place because I don't know where the new hideout is, but it's not really a great place. They do say that the truth hurts, and it did indeed hurt for the team anyway. So in this episode, we have the return of the Koenig family. You remember them? However, 2 of them get attacked, them being Billy and Sam. And sadly enough, Billy gets taken, and that is because of the fact that he knows where the Darkhold is, because that is the one that Coulson gave the Darkhold to. Also, throughout this episode, Fitz, Simmons, and Mac are trying to get some answers out of the LMD Radcliffe. Also, Billy gets taken to a place. Apparently, it's a submarine. And Radcliffe pretends to be a prisoner in order to be able to get information. However, the moment that the main man, who is known as Ivanov, tries to hurt Koenig, Radcliffe instantly blows his cover because he doesn't want anyone to get hurt. And now he is going to use his virtual reality, I guess, in order to gain access. So they give him a virtual reality access, like, ooh, a puppy. And then they download his memories, basically, in order to be able to relive them. What is this? The Animus? Meanwhile, back at base, Sam is very happy to see Quake because of the fact that he's a big fan. And apparently, online, there is some spicy fan fiction between her and Black Widow. And apparently, there's a term for it called quack. And I hate everything in life right now. Absolutely everything. This is garbage, and I hate it all. So Sam then reveals that he knows about the Darkhold, and that Billy, yeah, he didn't really hold on to that Darkhold. So also, the LMD Radcliffe reveals that the real Radcliffe knew Fitz's dad, so that caused a little bit of problems. And Ivanov also hates Inhumans because they didn't earn their power. So basically, he's just jealous that all they had to do is get into a cocoon and now they're superpowered. But Billy gave the book to Sam, who then gave it to LT. So now we need to find who LT is, which is also something that Radcliffe sees, at least the first part, not the LT part. And we learned that LT is a woman because apparently there's a woman in this midst as well. We have a bunch of brothers that look the same, and then one woman, which I will actually say would have been really funny if it was just another Koenig, but then in a wig. That would have been super funny if it was just like a guy in a wig, you know. That would have been really funny. However, she gave it back to Billy in order for a little bit of hot potato. So Radcliffe goes through the memories more, and he learns that Billy eventually got the book back, and apparently he put it in some place called the Labyrinth. And Radcliffe gets all the codes that they need. So now Coulson and team need to get over to the Labyrinth in order to be able to get that book before the bad guys do, because if Billy had it, they know about it. Also, Ivanov doesn't really trust machines, and he's gonna get the information the old-fashioned way because he's an old-fashioned guy. By the way, Ivanov is the leader of the Watchdogs, just so that you know. However, then Ida kills a couple of Watchdogs guys, and it's like, you brought an Inhuman here. It's like, no, this is actually a machine. And then he immediately is like, okay, sure, why not? So Fitz is trying to figure out how to crack Radcliffe, the LMD, because of the fact that he can't get into the coding. But then Gemma says something that makes Fitz think. So Fitz walks over to the LMD, and then he screws open the back of his head, and we see the brain that was created by Ada earlier on in the season. And immediately Simmons is like, oh, so May is also an LMD. That's a problem. So the gang gets the book However, then May LMD doesn't want to hand it over because of the fact that her programming. And then Coulson's like, oh, so you're the bad guy. You're an LMD too. So then Quake blasts her because she also knows, because Fitz and Simmons know, and also break the legs of the LMD as well. And then they try to escape. The problem is the watchdogs are here with Billy, and they're kind of holding him hostage. So it's a little trade. So Coulson throws the Darkhold to them, and then a fight breaks out, and in the end, Billy runs away with the Darkhold. However, he gives it to May because he doesn't know about the whole LMD situation. So May then attacks him, wants the Darkhold, but then Radcliffe shows up, picks up the Darkhold, leaves the LMD May behind, and walks off. So we lost, boys. We lost the Darkhold. We lost everything, basically. Meanwhile, the bad guys are celebrating. And also, let us burn the LMDs, alright? Let's get them out of here. Just burn that to ashes. And to end it all, we learned that Ivanov wants Coulson. So that's gonna be an interesting thing. He wants Coulson because, to be honest, everything that has happened so far in the MCU, in a way, Coulson was always connected, you know? The Inhumans, the Chitauri, all of it, Coulson was involved in the Avengers movie slightly. He was involved during Thor. He was involved during the Inhumans. So he wants him. So, yeah, that's gonna be a bit of a problem. Everything needs a model to be built after. And Ada is just like everything else. It needs a base model. And let's meet that base model. That being Agnes. Yes, Ada exists in real life. And she is human. Also, Radcliffe has a new location. And Ivanov has read the Darkhold a little bit. And in it, apparently, it's stated that the cure for Inhumans is Radcliffe. Or at least that's what Ivanov says. So maybe. However, Radcliffe has a couple of Terrigen crystals. Who knows how he got those? But he's been inside a shield. So maybe he took a couple of them. And now we're gonna create an Inhuman to basically distract S.H.I.E.L.D. That's kind of the plan. Also, we learned that the strength serum that Mace has been taking will kill him eventually. If not the next shot, it will be the shot after that. So he should not use it. Yeah, okay. This is a TV series. We all know what that means. So the main Watchdogs guy that we have seen so far, called S.H.I.E.L.D, he goes over to Nadir in order to be able to turn her into an Inhuman to distract S.H.I.E.L.D. That kind of stuff. Problem is, he turns into the Inhuman and his power is going boom. So he kills Nadir. Sad. It's actually funny though, because the scene when they see the fact that an explosion went off, Daisy is instantly like, no, it must be one of them hate groups, in order to make it seem like the Inhumans are evil. And then later on it's like, well, Nadir's dead. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, well, about that one. Maybe this time it was actually an Inhuman. It's like, you can't always dismiss these cases to being, you know, the Inhuman hate group. It could actually be Inhumans. There is a chance for that, you know? Because even though Daisy says, nope, because none of the Inhumans we know about were there, it's like, yeah, but what about the Inhumans that you did not know about? Huh? What about them? Because there are a lot of Inhumans. Not every one of them is known to you, probably. So Coulson confronts this woman named Agnes, and she basically reveals that, her and Radcliffe were an item, and I'm like, why? And also, apparently he ran out on her when he learned she had a brain tumor. This is what we like to call in the business motivation. So Coulson is like, we have to force her in order to help us, and then Mac is like, I'm not gonna force her. I'm not that kind of person. So then Coulson is gonna force her alone. Also, Shockley is alive, and he goes back to base, where Ivanov is very angry at him, and he decides to leave. So then S.H.I.E.L.D. arrives and takes them into custody, outside of Ivanov, obviously, because he already left. So Coulson goes over to Agnes, and instead of forcing her, he's like, I'm gonna tell her a story, because even he can't do it. And he tells her about Melinda May, and that convinces her to help. So she sends a message to Radcliffe, which Ada sees, and then Radcliffe tells Ada about the fact that she was modeled after Agnes, and she's like, I'm not unique. It's like, well, you are. Your personality is unique. Everything else about you is unique. It's just your looks aren't unique. So now that we have the guy and a couple of Watchdogs guys, now we need to get some answers out of them, but they're not really talking. Sadly enough, Shockley doesn't really seem good to talk. And Fitz and Simmons are examining the explosive that was in the area. Turns out it was a husk, and the only one who survived was Shockley. So he's the bomb. So they go and are like, hey, he's the bomb. So when Shockley is ready to blow up, Mace and Fitz push him into a container and eject it, causing him to blow up anyway. But yeah, also, by the way, throughout this episode, Mace feels really useless because without the serum, he has got no powers. And he is not really good in the training department either. So he's basically the mascot for S.H.I.E.L.D. And I'm like, you did not know that? That's what Coulson said back in the day, you know? He was like, look, I'm gonna be in charge, but you're gonna be the face. It's like, you're gonna be the mascot. Yeah, you are. That's what you are. However, sadly enough, Shockley is alive. He regenerates when he's off the plane. And Fitz and Simmons realize that the only way to stop Shockley is because of the fact that he uses a frequency is Quake. And she's like, well, this is gonna be very difficult, so she tries to practice a bit, but keeps failing at the practice. So Radcliffe goes over to Agnes, he delivers a phone to her, and he calls her. And then he says, I didn't leave you because of what happened. I left in order to find a cure. I've been trying to find a cure all this time, and I have finally found it. Now please, come with me. So she gets up, she walks the way that she's supposed to walk, because that'll lead us to Radcliffe. However, then he's like, I found the answer, and it's the framework. The framework will save you. Please, Agnes. And Agnes then drops the communicator and gets in with him, and he drives off. So that's a bit sad. However, he did reveal that he has someone already in the framework and that she's alive. Instantly, Coulson is like, so May is alive. That is a good thing. And now we get the whole reason why Radcliffe wanted the Darkhold and why he did all of this was to save her, kind of. Well, actually, it was to save all of humanity. Because basically, his plan is to put all of humanity inside of the framework. Yes, we got one of those things, you know. Let's put everyone inside of the metaverse. Is that still a thing? By the way, I don't actually know if that's still a thing. But let's put everyone in the metaverse. So now we need to stop Shockley. And Daisy, instead of preventing him from blowing up, she's like, I'm gonna do the opposite. In the notes, I have it written a little bit differently because I had written... Because I didn't have enough room in the line, I wrote down Daisy keeps blowing Shockley. Not like that. But she keeps blowing him up in order to exhaust him. And also Fitz and Simmons have made a machine to be able to contain him. However, Ivanov is here. So Mace stays behind. And he is going to basically fight off the watchdogs while Fitz and Simmons capture Shockley. Initially, they're against it, but then they agree. So they drive off. Mace uses the serum again. Doesn't kill him. And he stops the truck. And then he gets captured. Yep, it's that easy sometimes. And Daisy blows up Shockley again. And then they drive through it and basically suck him up. And then to end the episode, we put Agnes in the framework, and then Ada takes her necklace and puts it around her neck. That might have some meaning later on. I absolutely, truly do not know. So this episode starts off with Daisy and Coulson training in the framework. Because yes, they have basically a demo version of the framework. Because obviously they work together with Radcliffe on the framework. However, Fitz and Simmons are going to use pieces of the framework in order to be able to locate the real framework. Because of the fact of data stuff that I do not understand at all. So now we need to find the director. And we go to a location. However, we find the suit and a wall dedicated to Coulson. However, one thing stands out, and that is the mining facility that is there. And apparently, back in the day at that mining facility, Coulson was sent there because there was an 084. Yeah, you remember those. However, he wasn't able to get into the place because we get the whole flashback. But May was there as well, and she took out the guard, and then they went inside together. However, then there were a couple of guys that showed up. So Coulson tries to talk his way out of it. However, May escapes with the 084, and Coulson gets taken, and then May rams into the van that has Coulson in it and saves him, and then they head home, and we technically get the introduction of May and also Andrew. Yeah, you remember that? But she's talking about the fact that right now she's dating a shrink, and it's never gonna work out. Oh, May, how little you know. It is going to be a horrible kind of way of how that's gonna go. Also, Mace escapes. However, he gets caught by Ivanov, who knows about Mace's serum, and then gets recaptured again and tortured, obviously, because what else is a Russian supposed to do in this downtime but to torture a prisoner? So now we head over to that mining facility and we find the safe that was busted open. By the way, we never find out what the 084 was. It's not necessarily important, I guess, for the storyline. It's just they needed to find a reason for them to be there, and the 084 is the simplest reason. Also, it was nice to see Coulson in his earlier days. However, he did look really old though, but that's because the fact that this episode doesn't use any de-aging technology. However, they do find a bunch of dead bodies inside of the safe, and one of them has a phone in its mouth. So Coulson takes the phone, and we learn that these men here were killed because of Coulson, because thanks to Coulson, they failed their mission, and that got them killed. And also, they were part of Ivanov's team, so he hates Coulson also because of that stuff. Meanwhile, Fitz and Simmons have figured out that the framework data is basically coming from everywhere, and it's like, how is this possible? You know, the book kind of did that stuff. However, eventually we learn of a location where potentially the framework is, and also maybe the director and May as well. Who knows? So we head over there. However, Fitz, sadly enough, blames himself for all of this because he helped Radcliffe with the framework and Ada and all that stuff. So he blames himself. But then Simmons is like, it's not your fault. So Ivanov, after a lot of torture, I guess, he frees Mace because, I don't know, he just wants to. However, he's like, look, I will forgive you, but I cannot say the same for my men. So he goes outside while 4 of his men go inside and beat up Mace. Now we get to the location, we blow up the wall, and now we split up the team a bit. So Coulson finds Ivanov, and Ivanov basically rambles on some more about the past. And then Coulson's like, I don't really care. I don't even remember you or your men or the mission, really. Also, here's Daisy. She's gonna beat you up. Have fun. So now we have Daisy versus Ivanov, which, yeah, she has power, so obviously she wins. However, we also get news that Ada is here as well. So Simmons leaves to go after Ada. However, sadly enough, she escapes in the submarine. And Mac finds the director and he saves him from being beaten to death. And then Coulson pops in as well to help Mac save the director as well. And then they grab the director and they head out because of the fact that we have to tend to our wounded. We cannot stay in this location anymore. And when we get home, Simmons notices something, and that is the fact that the LMD system has been taken offline. The person who did that was Coulson. And when she looks at the last data, it turns out that there was an LMD among them. Or, better yet, they were all LMDs. Yes, Coulson, Daisy, Mac, and Mace are LMDs. So we got a big problem on our hands. And also, Ada takes Ivanov because she's like, even filth, which is something that he said earlier, but even filth have a role to play. And then to end the episode, Coulson LMD turns May's LMD back on. So we are about to get into some problematic areas with the next episode because it's a fight against the LMDs, I guess. Welcome to the finale of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yes, because after this, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is done. This is technically the last episode until they bring it back in a revival a bit later on, but sadly enough, this is indeed the final episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So let's see how they did with this episode. However, this series also created a spin-off that we will be talking about next, so don't worry about it, we're not done yet. So let's see how they did with the finale before we get to the spin-off, shall we? Because the gang's in the framework and Ada basically removes Ivanov's head and puts it in a machine and gives him a robot body that he is controlling remotely. So technically she did not touch his brain. That was the rule. By the way, that's a reveal more towards the end, but it's such a minimal thing that I couldn't really care about, so I'll just put it there. Also, Fitz and Simmons now have to act normal because of the fact that there are 4 LMDs here. And their plan is to search for the sub. And I have been searching for subs for a long time. It's just people don't want to do it. Don't forget to subscribe. But yeah, anyway, we gotta search for the sub. That is at least the plan. So Fitz and Simmons are able to squeeze their way out and get to a room together. Also, Mace is all back good as new, baby. Which is very, yeah, a little bit sus. Also, Coulson is like, we have to replace the other 2. And they want to get all of the Inhumans at the base. And you know what that means, right? They're gonna get all the Inhumans here and kill them all. Because that was also part of their directive. Because of the fact that that is what the Ivanov fella wanted. So the first one that they call for is Yo-Yo. Because of the fact that she seems to be, well, the best one to do. Because she's the one who's most familiar with the base. Also, last time we had the awakening of LMD May. However, she's not really on board fully. Because of the fact that she was programmed differently than Coulson Mac, because she was basically programmed to be Melinda May. She's making the choices that Melinda May would make. The only difference is the fact that she had to hand over the Darkhold to Radcliffe. That is the only difference. So she's kind of iffy on the whole thing because she's still technically Melinda May, or at least a copy of it. But she does go along with it because she can be with Coulson, which apparently is what Melinda May truly wants. And once Fitzsimmons are alone together, they need to figure out a plan in order to be able to do. However, when they went through, apparently there was also another LMD scanner installed, and one of these 2 is now an LMD. And I like the tension that they put in this situation, even though Fitz is the LMD. I like how they put it, the tense stuff in here, and I love that. The way that they handle it, the way that Fitz cuts his own wrist, and it's like, it's so much blood. I was trying to avoid the weak point, you know, the blood vein, I guess, but I hit it on accident. Oh no, don't look. Also die, Simmons, because I am the LMD. Haha. However, earlier in the episode, they said that the 2 people needed to be replaced. If Fitz isn't one of the 2, who's the other one? Well, that one we'll figure out later on. So Daisy decides to go down into the basement in order to, I don't know, I guess check on some equipment for, because the fact they're getting a bunch of Inhumans here, they gotta check up on the equipment. However, LMD Mac is really upset about that, and he goes after her. Also, Simmons kills LMD Fit, who says that he wants to marry her, which is probably what Fitz wants, you know, because he has the memories of Fitz. He just has the programming that he knows that he isn't the real Fitz, but he does have Fitz's memory, so Fitz wants to marry Simmons. That's nice to know for Simmons. So Daisy goes into the second room, and in there we get that scene from Shadow the Hedgehog, the video game, when he sees a bunch of himself. You remember that scene? I don't know if you do, but he sees that scene, and it's just like, Daisy just sees an army of herself, and my first reaction was like, am I an android too? What Shadow says in the game. However, yeah, Mac's kinda coming, so she needs to hide, and thankfully, she is wearing the exact same outfit as the LMDs, so she's able to partially undress a little bit in order to be able to fit in with the other Daisies. So Mac then looks around. However, he notices that the bra strap of one of them is moved slightly. So he's like, that's the one. But no, the other one was the one. So Daisy uses her powers, which officially confirms that she's not an LMD because they can't use powers. They don't have the inhuman powers. So Daisy runs and hides and watches through the cameras and sees a dead Fitz. But then the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are like, wait, this is an LMD. And then the Coulson and Mac LMD shoot them. And it's like, oh god, who is and isn't the LMD? And also Mac made sure that the cameras will be killed now. So now Daisy is basically alone. She doesn't know who she can and cannot trust. However, she sees a blood trail and finds Gemma. And Gemma is also one of the good ones. However, Daisy now wants to make 100% sure. And the only way to do that is with her powers. Because if she uses her powers, I mean, first of all, LMDs can't use powers. And second of all, she can detect Gemma's bones or metal, so she would know which one it is. So Gemma is entirely frightened, understandably so. So Daisy basically just jumps her and pulls her close and then quakes her and it's like, oh hey, we're both safe, yay, fantastic. Okay, so we just have Coulson, Mac, and Mace, and also Fitz to worry about. Fantastic. This is gonna be hell. Also, Ada is having a little bit of an issue with herself, and that is the fact that her main objective is to protect the framework. However, the unpredictability of humanity kind of conflicts with that. But her other directive is to protect Radcliffe. And if Radcliffe were to say it, the framework could be destroyed. So number 2 fights number 1. So which one is correct? So she decides to just slit his wrists and push him into the framework. That way he is now a part of the framework and she can continue on to protect the framework and know for a fact that no one's gonna destroy the framework. Or at least not reprogram her in order to do it. So Daisy goes out to fight the LMDs, and also they gas all of the agents in the base in order to be able to, you know, just have LMD, because if they have all the agents to deal with as well, this is not gonna go well. Because Coulson and Mac have basically stated, yeah, Daisy and Simmons are LMDs, and if you find them, kill them, but not their heads, because we need their brains in order to be able to figure out where the real ones are. And it's like, that sounds a little bit suspicious. Also, throughout this episode, I had a little bit of an issue with the fact that they're just walking around like robots. Didn't really like that. Also, Daisy wants to go into the framework. That happened before that, by the way. Her brilliant idea is to go into the framework in order to free the guys so that they can escape themselves, hopefully. So everyone gets put to sleep. Daisy fights against Mace, and then afterwards also against Coulson and Mac, which I do like the fact that she's just like building up this gigantic quake wave in her hands, and then she just blasts it to her side in order to destroy. And also Gemma is gonna go after a couple of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, so she's gonna wake them up with the serum and maybe have them help us. So then a couple of them wake up and is like, I don't trust that you're not an LMD, and Gemma's just like, I don't care. I don't care. I got the gun. Get up, help me. Technically, they could easily overpower her, but still. So then when the woman whose name I do not remember because I do not care, when she attacks Simmons, right before the attack hits, Mac's body gets blasted through and it's just lying there with like, oh, okay, so that was the LMD, so they were telling the truth. Okay, so now the plan is this. Daisy and Simmons will get the equipment on board. Meanwhile, the rest of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents that we've woken up will get the bodies of the other sleeping agents and put them all on Zephyr 1, and then then will escape. However, the road is blocked by May's LMD, and May's LMD eventually lets them go. Today I'll get onto the server. Also, Coulson wants to activate the Daisy LMD fleet in order to be able to, I don't know, guess fight back. But however, the May LMD did call to Coulson and be like, yeah, hey, I got him. So Coulson arrives and is like, so where are they? He's like, yeah, you let them go. Because of the fact that you're not the real Coulson, because you don't have a heart. And that is what I love about Coulson. And then she blows herself up right as Zephyr 1 is leaving. So it gets a little bit shaky by the blast, but they take off and fly away. Also, we picked up Yo-Yo, I guess. I guess we also send out a distress signal to the rest of the Inhumans in order not to come to the base, because danger is following you. And now it's time to get plugged into the framework. However, one little rule that happens is the fact that if you die in the framework, you die in real life. So what could possibly go wrong? So Daisy wakes up in the framework, and of course she's in a bath. Of course, at this very moment, her framework self was taking a bath. She gets a text message, she reads it, and then she's like, Lincoln! Because she needs to wake up her boyfriend and go to headquarters. So she gets out of the bath. I guess she dries herself off a bit, and then she walks into the room, and she sees her boyfriend lying in bed, and she's really happy to go. However, then we zoom in on the picture, and it's Grand Ward, baby! He's back. The actor came back for a little bit of an adventure here as well. Also, Coulson is a teacher who hates Inhumans because he's like, why we should fear Inhumans. Mac also has his daughter Hope back, so that's nice. Fitz is rich for some reason, and Gemma Simmons is dead. So who's that woman that he was about to pull out of that car? Are you with someone else? Who are you with? Who is your potential lover? Or is this one of those rich people things? You know, when rich men always have like a woman on their arm. That is not their girlfriend. That is not their daughter. That is just like someone that they hired in order to have a girl on their arms, in a sense. So is it one of those? Do you have a framework girlfriend? Or what was that all about? I'm very curious about that. But like I said, this ends Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because as we see May standing in the place from Winter Soldier, the camera zooms out, and now Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is officially done. Because now we have Agents of Hydra next. That is actually what the next plotline is called from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4. It is called Agents of Hydra. Because the first storyline is Ghost Rider, the second one is LMD, and the third one is Agents of Hydra. So, sadly enough, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. got cancelled, but we got a nice little spin-off, Agents of Hydra. So now we have to deal with a whole lot of what ifs, because that's the title of the next episode. Hello everyone, welcome to the first episode of the spin-off show, Agents of Hydra. Yes, we are now in a spin-off show called, well, you know, the framework, I guess. Because in here, everyone's Hydra, and maybe someone's S.H.I.E.L.D., who knows. Anyway, Daisy and Ward are Agents of Hydra, and also, she's not Daisy no more. She is Sky once again. And they get called into work, and at work, Daisy's acting really weird, and apparently it's because of the fact that, you know, she asked Ward to move in together, and he said, nah, I'll think about it. But no, I don't know if that's the right next step. Maybe you should wait a bit, you know? So she goes over to the computer, she logs in with her thumbprint, and then searches up Lincoln, who is dead. That's good to know. And then Gemma, who is also dead. Not good to know. So now we are running into some problems. Also, May arrives, and she does not remember Daisy or anything. So we are gonna have a lot of trouble on our hands. And Gemma rises from the grave, from the great beyond. She's back from the dead, and she is not okay in that sense. I love the way that what they do with her voice in this episode. Like, she has this like crackling voice, like she's just come back from the dead. I love that. Anyway, she stops the car, gets in. However, then we get to an Inhuman checkpoint, and she has an ID with her, but it's the S.H.I.E.L.D. ID, which are the enemy, as you may not know. So the woman is like, get out of my car. So Gemma gets kicked out of the car, and now she has to run for it. And eventually she makes it to the bench that was supposed to be the exit. She finds the exit button, puts it in her pocket, and then afterwards she makes an X on the bench because Daisy didn't show up yet, and then she runs away. So let's see what Daisy's been up to, because we have an Inhuman in our custody and we need to get some answers out of it. So Daisy has to interrogate him, and first of all, it's the deer, the brother, you know, the Inhuman. And Daisy is initially not really successful, and then May behind the glass gets a bit annoyed, and then Daisy's like, alright, I know this is a fake ID, and I know that you're not the real person, okay? Your name is Nadir. And then she drills him for questions, and then it's like, let the doctor handle him from here on out. Also, Gemma eventually also makes it to like a bar where she gets questions by two guys, and she takes them out, learns that she was dead, and now has a vehicle, which actually happened before the bench thing, but I actually misread that in the notes. My apologies. Also, Coulson is a teacher now because this is basically the one regret that they have in life, because sometimes you shouldn't really regret the decisions that happened in your life. For example, the way that all of this happened partially was because of what May did. May saved the girl and killed a lot of people. You know, the Bahrain girl. And then the Bahrain girl went on to kill a lot of people. So that is how Hydra was apparently able to partially seize power as well. And I guess they took care of all of the Avengers and made sure that the Avengers could not exist in this virtual reality where it's like, you know, Ada technically has control over the thing. And also Radcliffe did, but Ada is really the one in control. However, as we learned in the last episode, Coulson had one regret in a way. He was like, what if I just never joined S.H.I.E.L.D? And we get to see that now because he's a teacher. And a kid in his class is like, hey, sir, wasn't Hydra Nazis? So then Coulson walks up to him and is like, no, actually, they existed before the Nazis existed. That is in reference to season 3. I like how they do that stuff, which is kind of funny because Hydra's whole point was to bring back an Inhuman, and now they all want to kill every single Inhuman. It's not fully, but like I like how they use the past in order to make the framework storyline work. But then people come into the classroom and they need to take a kid, and luckily enough, it is not the kid who questioned Hydra, but instead another kid gets taken, sadly enough. But if you're wondering who the doctor is, let's find out his identity, because of course it's Fitz. And he is basically using this machine in order to see what Inhuman's powers he was gonna get without turning him into an Inhuman. And it looks very painful, and Daisy is not okay with it, but not really much she can do. However, Gemma then heads for Coulson, and she talks to him. However, she can't really get through to him, but when she mentions Tahiti, it all starts to work. It kind of starts to click with him. How do you know that? It's a magical place. How do you know that? Who are you? But he still kicks Gemma out and calls the cops, basically. But he is still questioning it. Later on in the episode, you see him question it, flipping through a bunch of things and being like, oh my god, how did she know? And then he has like a whole list of like, it's a magical place on paper, because it's like, that is still in his brain, even though he never went through the programming. And then May arrives to the doctor with news of the fact of the ID, and also, Simmons has been spotted because Simmons leaves Coulson, runs into a kid, and a kid gives her his car because the kid is like, are you with the Resistance? In that sense, because initially it's like, Hydra scum. It's like, oh, you're with the Resistance. Maybe. I don't know. So, the Resistance, that's gonna be interesting. We really need to get to those people. I wonder who's part of it. However, she has been spotted, so, May just is like, we got an intruder here, and that gives Daisy the enough information to be like, oh, that's Gemma. Oh, no. I need to get to Gemma now. So she leaves. But initially, she wants to join in on the task force, but that's not gonna happen. So she leaves. And then Ward is like, hey, what's wrong with you? And Daisy's like, leave me alone. You didn't want to move in together? Then leave me alone, okay? And she heads off to the park. She finds the place. She sees the X. The escape button is gone. And then Gemma shows up, and we have the reunion boys. However, at that point, Ward also shows up. And it's like, oh, boy. He is Hydra, because of course he is. I like how Ward stayed the same. And no, actually he's not. He is once again a double-crossing agent. However, this time he is a double-crossing agent for S.H.I.E.L.D. It's like the framework was made for me. In case you don't remember, I think I actually talked about this in season 1. I loved Ward at the beginning of season 1. He was my favorite character, and then they did the reveal of him being evil, and I didn't like it. I did like it eventually, you know. I liked how they went with it. But like, I wanted Ward, because he was my favorite character, to be a good guy. And it's like the framework went into my mind and fixed it for me. So now Ward is a good guy, and they're driving away and have a bit of a chase. And also Ward is like, hey, Sky, you're an Inhuman. And Sky's like, yeah, I know. Just like, yeah, I know. Which makes me go, okay, can we get one of them Terrigen crystals or not? Like, that would help us out a lot. If we could get Quake in here, that would be perfect. But eventually we escape the Hydra people. Daisy and Simmons go back into the apartment, and also Ward burns the car, and also is like, hey, what's your real name? And she's like, it's Daisy. He's like, that's nice. It's like, oh, the Ward that I've always wanted. So they go inside, and they ready to push the button, but it doesn't work because they know we're here. Uh-oh. And also, about the mole and everything, Fitz isn't allowed to see who it is. Okay, the trio of people, basically. He isn't allowed to see it, so he goes up to the boss, and it turns turns out the head of Hydra is Ada. And she is the woman that Fitz put his hand out for in the last episode. Yes, they are together. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, good to see that one coming. Fitz, you lucky devil. First, you have Gemma, and then you got a sex bot. My goodness, what a guy. But yeah, she is the head of Hydra, and she's dating Fitz. And she can't let Fitz see Gemma, because that might cause Fitz to regress, leave her, and go back to Gemma. And might get his memories back. We cannot have that happen because of how close of a connection they have and all that stuff. And then to end the episode, Daisy goes over to Coulson. Coulson doesn't remember her, and she's like, well, I'm sorry, okay, but like, you're the only person that I always go to. You're like a father to me. And then he's like, Daisy? And then the episode ends, and this is the start of Ages of Hydra, and it's a fantastic beginning. I'm already locked in, even though technically I was already locked in thanks to Ages of S.H.I.E.L.D. Also has a little bit of a thing that I kind of forgot to talk about, and I'll talk about it right now. I like when Ward wakes up, Daisy tries to blast him, but she has no powers, and then he puts his hand towards her. Like, what is this kind of thing? I love that scene. Alright, it's time to get Coulson up to speed about the whole, like, simulation thing, and he is a conspiracy theorist. Why? Why is he that? He's like, oh, it's the shampoo. It's like, what? Next thing you're gonna tell me is that the water turns the frogs gay. What are you talking about? Wait, what? But he believes us. That's the point. That is it, okay? He may be a little bit conspiracy guy, but at least he believes us. So now we have 3 members of the team. Also, this episode focuses a bit more on Mac. And he is building drones with his daughter. However, then a little bit of a problem happens when it turns out that his daughter found a broken Hydra drone and uses it for parts. That's a bit sad. Also, Simmons wants to get to Fitz, and that is a bad idea. However, why don't we go to Radcliffe, because he's here as well. Also, Fitz doesn't like being in the dark, so Ada, who now goes by Ophelia, sure, why not? She apparently told him about the other world. She has been honest-ish with him. She's not been honest about him entirely, but she's been kind of honest about the other world. So, getting Fitz back, that's gonna be a bit more of a problem. He's gonna be the problematic one in this season, because of the fact that he is too deep in. Because everyone had, like, an event in their life change because of their regrets. And, for Fitz, that was, I guess, bringing his dad back, which I think actually will get revealed later on, but we already kind of got it revealed, so I'm just gonna throw it out there right now. But yeah, his dad is back, and with Fitz, under the influence of his father, is a horrible person. Also, he doesn't know Gemma, and he's ready to kill her. Simple as that. So Daisy goes back to Hydra in order to get the location of Radcliffe, and she gets it. However, she gets caught, and she gives the paper to Ward to be like, give this to Gemma. So she gets taken away because of a mission, boy. She's on a mission. Also, Gemma and Coulson at this point are going to the Resistance. They get these handcuffs, and Coulson's like, oh my god, this is so cool. It's like, what are you, Spider-Man? But they get put in a van, and they get taken to the S.H.I.E.L.D. base, which is run by Mace. Yep, even though he's in the framework, he is still the leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I guess they didn't fix any of his regrets. Like, I mean, I guess maybe they did, because they call him the Inhuman Resistance leader, and it's like, is he actually a real-life Inhuman or not? Because that could be the one regret that he might have, you know, that Ada fixed for him to make him a real Inhuman. Also, we learned that Mac doesn't hate Inhumans, and Mac and his daughter get put up against the wall for a mandatory checkup, and they find an Inhuman, and they take him away. So at least they're not here for Mac and the daughter. But don't worry, Mac is not a bad guy. At least that's something that I like. He's just, keep your head down, don't make any trouble. That's all we can do. So then Ward returns and talks about the fact that Daisy was taken, and he hands over the piece of paper to Gemma because of the fact that, well, we can trust her, and it's the location of Radcliffe. So Coulson is like, we're gonna go, because Mace is like, we ain't got no people to go there. It's like, yeah, we're gonna go. So then Ward is like, I'm gonna fly, and they go and take one of the Quinjets and fly it away. And they're also like, imagine this place full of Quinjets, and I'm like, yeah, I can. I think I could skip back a couple episodes and see that exact same thing, plus a giant ship of Zephyr 1, which Gemma also says to Coulson, and she also tells him that he was in command of it all. That just blows his mind. So they're gonna go and get Radcliffe. Meanwhile, Daisy gets put in the briefing room, and they talk about Gemma, and that they need to, well, basically take her, and also that they have a next mission. But Daisy's like, how can you be okay with this, May? And May is like, what? And it's like, Are you an idiot? She's still under the control of Madam Hydra, as she calls herself, or Ophelia, or Ada, as we're gonna call her. However, before we do that, we're gonna take Mac. Why? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's the drone thing, but still, they just break into Mac's place, take him to Hydra, and it's like, okay, sure, why not? Also, Fitz learns of Gemma's death, and that is officially when we get the reveal that Ada told him about the other side. But he doesn't care. He just wants to be with Ophelia, and also wants Gemma and S.H.I.E.L.D. dead. Simple as that. So May interrogates Mac, and it doesn't really go all that well. Meanwhile, Daisy's sitting with Hope and has a little bit of a chat, and she realizes you're the Hope that he lost. Because remember, during the Ghost Rider arc, Ghost Rider was like, Mac lost Hope, and it's like, he lost Hope. It's her. That's what he lost. So she realizes that. So then they get out, and May talks to Sky a bit, and they both didn't really get information. So Sky then goes in there, hopefully without anyone noticing. And then Mac's like, you're Daisy Johnson. And I'm like, okay, great. Mac is on this team. Fantastic. However, turns out it was all a trap for her to admit that she is part of S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh boy. And also, I'm like, how do you know that? She never went by Daisy Johnson in this place. I guess maybe it was part of Madam Hydra's whole thing. You know, Ada might have actually said that as a trap for Sky. So then Mac gets free. Sky tries to escape, but fails. Gets beaten up really bad, and then gets taken. However, then Hope sees Sky, and she's like, but that lady was nice to me. And now Mac can't really look his daughter into the eyes. So we arrive at Radcliffe's place. And we have a little bit of a chat with Radcliffe. And, well, turns out there is no escape. There's no escape. And also, Ada kind of took over the whole place. He's just supposed to be here and keep his head down. And he lives here with Agnes, who, is the actual Agnes from the real world. You remember that? However, she doesn't know about any of this stuff. I guess he kind of changed her memory a bit in order to be able to give her a life. And that is why he loved being in the, I guess in the Animus, as you could say, in the framework. However, he also hates it here, and this is exactly what Ada was talking about. Because Ada was like, you know, eventually you're gonna regret building the framework, and then you want to destroy the framework, but my directive is to protect the framework. That is the whole reason Ada did it, and it immediately happens too. He's like, I'm sick of this place. Alright, look, I wanted to help people, but this is not what I had in mind. So then Ward is very confused, and Hydra arrives. So Ward, Gemma, and Coulson hide, while hopefully Radcliffe is able to talk them away. Yeah, that doesn't really work, because Madam Hydra herself is here with Fitz, and they get to a little bit of talking. Also, Radcliffe calls her Ada, which is not supposed to be called that. She doesn't like that name. She just doesn't like that name. And then they find Agnes, they take her, and Fitz grabs a gun, and he's like, alright, you're gonna give us the information that we want, or I'm gonna shoot her dead. Alright? So then Radcliffe tells him about the fact it's like, look, man, we were friends. We built Ada together, okay? I'm sorry that everything has gone sideways, but I was trying to do the right thing. And then Fitz just shoots Agnes, kills her, and then Gemma comes out, and she's like, also, before that, Gemma pleads with Ward not to kill Fitz because of the fact that she loves him, and Ward agrees, but now the woman's dead, so that's gonna cause a little bit of problem later on. But I feel like it's gonna be more in the next episode. But, yeah, Fitz is, very different in this world. And then they take Radcliffe, but because Gemma jumped out and yelled Fitz, now we need to make our grand escape. However, Ward is a really good shot, and surprisingly Coulson as well, which is not that surprising at all. And, Hydra retreats with Radcliffe, and then they go back to the base in order to, see, I guess, the next plan. However, yeah, there's a little bit of fighting because, Mace is mad that Fitz isn't dead because he is the doctor, and if we could kill him, that would be a major blow against Hydra. However, we can't really be too mad because we have a visitor, Mac. He's here because of the fact that Daisy got taken, and he wants to help save her because he can't look his own daughter in the eyes. And then in the post-credit scene, we have Daisy in a cage, and Fitz walks in. Daisy tries to convince him, doesn't work, and then Fitz like, hey, I took another look at your DNA. Guess what I found, you inhuman scum? And, yeah, any day now, any day, someone want to stab her, one of those crystals, with anyone want to throw a Terrigen crystal at her, please? You know, it would be nice if that happened, you know, just saying. So in this episode, we're gonna create a roadblock in order to potentially save Daisy and also stop a prison transport bus. However, when we go inside of the bus after we take out the guys, turns out it's a bunch of dead bodies, so that's a bit of a shame. But the bus can still be useful. Also, Fitz interrogates Daisy, but doesn't really go all all that far with that one. He doesn't really want to believe any of her quote-unquote lies. Also, May wants to go after the Patriot, and she's gonna help with a weapon that they've developed. So now that we have the bus, we're gonna use it in order to infiltrate Hydra. And Mac's like, I'll fix it up. So Mac goes to fix the bad boy up. New plates and everything. He is a genius. Good old Mac. Nice to have you back on the team. Kind of. Also, at Hydra, we learned that the special weapon that May is gonna be receiving will be a strength serum. So we're kind of doing the opposite thing. So instead of Mace taking the serum, it's gonna be May, actually, instead. Which, okay, yeah, sure. I mean, it doesn't really feel like something May would do, but she does it anyway. It's important for this episode. But like whenever May is gonna get given a weapon, she's like, I'll take my own. It's like, so I don't feel like she would do something like this, but I guess in this new reality she will. Also, Gemma tells Mace the truth, and he doesn't really believe it. Also, we learn a little bit more about Mace, and that only means one thing, but I'm not getting ahead of myself there. But yeah, and also Ada is gonna question Daisy, and she basically wanted to make the perfect world, and then you have Radcliffe in the other room. This isn't what I meant, you sadistic witch. And I'm like, wow, okay, calm down, Radcliffe. But also, Ada's gonna bargain with Daisy, because if you tell me your location in the real world, I will give you Lincoln. However, that's gonna be a no deal from Daisy, because no. She's not gonna sacrifice everything for Lincoln, okay? It's not gonna be one of those cliches. Also, we learned that Ada, the true thing that she wants is what any kind of program wants. Free will. Which I can tell you right now, Ada, having free will is not the best thing always. Alright? It's not. Because there are choices, and you gotta live with the consequences. And with programming, you don't necessarily have to live with the consequences because you're following your programming. If you make a mistake, it's on you, okay? When you have free will, that's on you. Also, Coulson's gonna drive the bus, and we have a nice moment between Fitz and his dad, and it's like, yeah, here we go. You instantly kind of get that feeling, like something creepy on your back. Like, he's not really the greatest guy, is he? Now, we know that he walked out on Fitz, but like, there's something off about this guy. This guy's not a good influence on our Fitz, and he isn't. Also, Radcliffe and Daisy get a little moment together, and he tells her about the fact that Fitz killed Agnes, sadly enough, and also that he did build an exit, and that Ada can't destroy it. The only thing she can do is put up a bunch of firewalls, but she cannot destroy it. And he tells Daisy the location, but we'll get back to that one. And also, I feel like at this point in the episode, we are now halfway done with this mini spin-off series, Agents of Hydra, because it's only about 5 episodes long, and then we're going back into the real world for the 2-parter finale. Fitz is also kind of troubled about killing Agnes, and then his dad is like, don't be a woman, and it's like, oh, you're one of those people. Great, yeah, okay. Well, I should have expected this. But like, really? He kind of went there though, and it's like, okay. Say that to Melinda May. I dare you. I dare you to tell that to Melinda May. I would love to see that. So Coulson arrives at the facility with his bags of dead bodies, I guess. And we get inside. Then the dead bodies turn out to be living because it's Mason. I forgot his name, but it was the case guy. The PR guy, as you could also call him. And now we have to infiltrate the place in order to free the people here. And I forgot this happened. I totally forgot this happened. This was such a big surprise to me. But one of the people they free was a family member of the Howling Commandos. It's Trip. It's Trip. He's back. Oh my god, it's Trip. Look, man, he was one of my favorites in season 2, and then they killed him when Daisy got her powers, and it's like, no, I've missed you so much. You have no idea. But he is literally the same Trip as he was before, obviously, because the Howling Commandos were fighting Nazis and Hydra, and now Trip would also fight Hydra, you know? It's just written in stone, simple as that. But, oh my god, Trip, you're back. It's so good to see you again. So May gets the serum injected into her, and she goes off to fight the Patriot because of the fact that they got a warning about the fact that the prison bus is there. So let's go over there. Also, Mort and Gemma have a nice moment together. Earlier, Gemma had a nice moment with Mac, actually. Well, not necessarily a nice moment. It was more like he saw him with his daughter. And she kind of now has changed a little bit of her perception about the fact that it's like, oh, you're just a bunch of ones and zeros. Because this is technically a real world. Yes, it was created, but let's be honest here. If you believe the Bible, our world was created. But still, it's like these are still, in a way, people in here anyway. It's weird to explain. So then Mort basically has a little bit of a moment with Gemma where he's like, so what did I even do to you in the real world? In your world, at least. Because of the fact that you hate me. And then it's like, did I kill anyone? Did I hurt anyone? It's like all of the above. All of the above. You are God, you're a horrible, lovable person. And I hate you. And I love you for that as well. But he's then like, I'm sorry for whatever it is I did. And he means it too. Because the AI, I guess you could say the AI version of him, is a good ward. So he means it. Because this is basically a ward that did not have the family problems from before. Still became a double agent though. And was connected to Hydra at some point. So, but overall, this is a good guy. However, then they get the notification that they know. Because the fact that Mac also hacked into the Hydra servers in order to be able to listen in on their talks over the radio. So now Ward and Simmons are like, let's go. However, Ward also wants to take Mac and Simmons like, no. Because of the fact that she has a difficulty taking Mac away from his zeros and one child, I guess. So the rescue mission was basically a success. However, he sees one of the kids from his class being taken into a building. And he wants to save that kid and all the other kids that are in there. So he goes after them. Trip tells this to Mace, who is then like, alright, they take this bus out of here. We're going after him. So Trip and Mace go to help Coulson. However, then May shows up and she fights against Patriot and actually gets a bit of the upper hand. That is not bad serum, I will tell you that much right now. However, once that starts wearing off, she's actually in trouble. And then she's like, finish me, in a way. And it's like, no, I don't kill you. I don't kill, okay? In a way being like, hey, we're the good guys here. So he goes off in order to help Coulson, and then Fitz orders May to bring the building down. Not saying that there are innocent lives in there. No. Just bring the building down. So May does that. But then, yeah, there are kids in there. So May goes into the building in order to confirm, because she has to confirm that Patriot is dead. However, then she sees the kids and she's like, oh boy, well, maybe I've been with the bad guys all along. So then she has a little bit of an existential crisis because of the fact that it's like, am I working for the good guys or not? But I'm supposed to arrest these people. So she's like, hands up. Also, the building kind of collapses in. However, Mace is able to lift the building up and save the kid. However, then we get to the RIP moment, because you remember what Gemma said. If you die in here, you die out there. So then everyone has to leave and Mace can't hold the building up anymore. So he dies. RIP the boy. I told you I liked him. I'm a big fan of Mace. The problem is the fact that we weren't supposed to like him in the beginning because the team didn't like him. However, he earned my trust and now he's dead. It's so sad, but you know what? He died doing what he always wanted to do, and that is be a hero. He died a hero, and that is the important part. Also, I love this because it actually shows the actual dangers of the framework, because afterwards, later on, we see Ada walking past the things and you see the flat line on Mace, and it's like, yeah, it shows us that, yeah, if you die here, you die in real life as well. It's just, it adds more stakes. I like that. However, May helps with the evacuation and then goes back to Hydra, I guess. And then to end the episode off, because I really want to eat, May gives Daisy the crystal and she turns back into Quake. She's back, baby. She's gonna shake the world, but not yet, because at this moment she's a cocoon. Alright, before I really get into this episode, there's just something that was mentioned in the last episode, and I kind of just let that bad boy slide, but I really need to talk about it because the Bakshi report. Like, when he said that, I didn't realize it until this episode where we actually see Bakshi. And I'm like, he's back! No way, it's Bakshi! Who knew I wanted him back, you know? He was actually entertaining in the Season 2 section when he was there. And it's just like he's back now. He's a news reporter, basically being like, I don't know, either mainstream media or Fox News, your choice. Whichever side of the political aisle you land on, it's the other one, you know? So if you're a right-wing person, it's the mainstream media. And if you're a left-wing person, it's Fox News. That's kind of what you need to see this as. But he's basically spreading lies. Also, Quake's back, baby. She got her powers back. However, it takes a little bit for her to get used to it. Because of the fact she just got out of the cocoon, she kind of still needs to restore herself. And as she says later on, it's kind of having a giant hangover with bees. Always the bees. But now we gotta escape. However, the escape plan doesn't go perfectly because Madam Hydra is here. So Daisy just blasts her out of the window all the way down and she breaks her spine. She should be dead technically, you know, if this was too realistic. However, because of the fact that she only broke her spine, she's fine in the real world. Dang it, we were so close. If only she were dead. Oh well, you know what? We'll have another chance later on in the season. Also, when Ada gets out, we also learn that Ivanov can't kill May, which he wants to do. But he can't do it because of the fact that, you know, his programming is kind of the same as her programming, which is you can't harm the people here unless they become an actual threat to the framework. Then you can kill them. But before that, you can't. However, he can kill Gemma and Sky because, they're threats to the framework. So that will be his objective. Search for them. So as May and Daisy are outside, I keep wanting to call her Sky. I'm kind of... my autism's starting to revert me back to season 1. But anyway, as they're walking outside, May is like, how are you able to be so good with your powers? And it's like, well, I had practice. What do you mean practice? Yeah, I'm not getting into this. It's like, it's probably best if you don't get into it about like the real world and all that stuff. Just don't. You know, just don't. Also, Fitz is very angry about the fact of what happened to Madam Hydra, or Ophelia, or Ada as we could call her. However, his dad tells him to stop being a woman, or like your mom, one of the two, and be a man. It's like, oh my god, really? Like, I'm happy you walked out on Fitz. I'm so happy because Fitz would have been such a prick. So Fitz has an idea. We're gonna expose them, basically. The May and Daisy, we're gonna expose them for being criminals. That way we'll have the public looking for them as well. It'll work. It is a good idea. So as Ward sees that from the base, he goes over to Coulson and tells him that he's gonna go and try and find Daisy, and if Coulson wants to come along. And Coulson kind of starts to become like, you know, the Coulson that we know and love, where he's like, no, that's not a good idea, okay? It's best to just wait for them to make contact, which, to be honest, Coulson is right about. As we learn later on, Coulson was correct. However, Ward doesn't care because he's not a leader. Also, Coulson tells a story about back in the day how S.H.I.E.L.D. agents approached him about joining S.H.I.E.L.D. and that he rejected it this time around. That's how his life turned like this. I still find it weird, though, that basically May saving the little girl in Bahrain caused Hydra to succeed at everything. That is very weird, but sure, why not? Also, Trip and Gemma are gonna have a recon mission for the machine because Gemma is like, oh, this is a Darkhold machine. We need to find out where it is, but it needs to be a place with power. And it's like, yeah, there's the oil mining thing. It's like, okay, that must be it. So they head over there. So now the team is a little bit split up. That's gonna be a little bit of a problematic thing later on. However, Daisy and May eventually arrive at the location where S.H.I.E.L.D., you know, in order to get to S.H.I.E.L.D. But that doesn't really work because of the fact that their faces are all over news and they were followed. So that's great too. So we have a little bit of a fight. One guy takes a bullet in the leg and is knocked out. And I'm like, what? Dude, you got shot in the leg. Stop being a little baby. He gets shot in the leg and he's like, oh, I'm fainting. It's pathetic, dude. Whatever. Anyway, they get inside, barricade themselves, and now we hide for the enemies to come in. Also, that news about the attack gets to Coulson and Mac, and they decide, together with PR guy whose name I forgot, in order to go after Daisy and May as well. So the Hydra agents get in, and Daisy and May take them out stealthily. However, then there's another guy who gets taken out by Mac, and Mac is then ready to shoot May because the fact that May was evil, and then it's like, no, she's not evil anymore. And Coulson then also jumps in front. It's like, hey, no. Don't kill her. I don't know why, but I trust her. Don't worry about it, okay? Let's go back home. And now we do with the gang. And then Daisy comes home and she's like, oh, of course. The secret base was actually our base. Should've known. It's like, yeah, you should've. Do you think we have money for another set? Do you have any idea how much Ghost Rider costs? All right? That was expensive. We don't have time to build another base. Of course, it's gonna be the same set that we have had before. And also, Ward is happy to see Daisy, but then it's a bit awkward because he is happy to see Daisy, but it's not the Daisy that he knows. And she's also a bit awkward because he is not the Ward that she knows, which later on also, I love the moments with Ward in this series, I guess. Yeah, in this part, I love the moments with Ward, especially when he learns of himself in the real world, what happened. I love all the reaction that he has. So then Gemma and Trip arrive at the location and they learn that the base is underwater. So they get to the location, they go down there. However, turns out there's nothing there because of the fact that the machine, the special Darkhold machine, is being built in the real world. But they did get the correct location. It's just not in here. It's basically Fitz is making the specs and sending them into the real world so that they can build it. And what is the machine? The machine is to make Ada a real girl. Yes, indeed. We're kind of using the tech that Ghost Rider's uncle had in order to be able to create matter out of nothing in a sense. And she's going to use that in order to create a body for herself. And also technically lift the restrictions that she has because she'll become a real person. So now we need to figure out how we're going to beat the bad guys. And Daisy's whole thing is about escaping this place. However, Coulson is then like, well, maybe to save us and help us escape, we need to save this world. Because the better this world is, the easier we will have it in order to escape. So we should probably tell the people the truth because of the fact that May has had body cam footage with her the entire time, which feels weird because that is a left-leaning thing to do. Because I feel like the right doesn't want body cams at all in cops, but the left does want that. So it's weird that Hydra, the bad guys, would want body cam footage on their agents. I don't know. I found that a bit weird, but it's very convenient. So we now have that footage, and we need to break it to the news station. So we break it. We tie up Bakshi. Very nice to see him again. And Coulson dresses up, and he's gonna tell the world the truth. We're gonna pre-record that, and then we're gonna splice that with the footage that we have, and then we're gonna basically release that out into the world. Also, the machine in order to make Ada a real girl is done. The machine is fully done, so that's great. And Fitz's dad goes to Radcliffe in order to interrogate him, and he doesn't really get much out of it. I do like the fact that even Radcliffe is like, the best thing that happened to Fitz is the fact that you walked out on him, you useless bastard. You're a useless drunk. You're useless without Fitz in the real world, and even here, you are also useless without Fitz. So he gets beaten up really bad. However, he does give them something that is a bit annoying, and that is the fact that he heard stuff through the vents, which might mean that they can use the camera footage in order to be able to, you know, find out where they're going if they were talking loud enough. So it's time to expose. However, Daisy and Ward have a little moment together, and I do like that he's just like, I'm sorry for what happened. Also, we learned the truth about what happened to Ward, because basically his origin story is exactly the same. He burned down the house. He got sent to prison for it. However, instead of Garrett being there to welcome him into Hydra, it was Victoria Hand who was there, and she helped him become a good person. And I do like the fact that little change, because that's the whole storyline here as well. One change can change your life forever. You know, Fitz became a prick because of the fact his dad's around, and because Victoria Hand picked up Ward, Ward is now a good guy. And also Daisy's then like, look, you know what? I never really understood Ward, but until I met you, because of the fact that you are what Ward could have been, which means that there was good in Ward. It was just drowned out by all the Hydra stuff. So I do like the fact that she gets that little piece of information. And then Ward is like, I'm gonna sacrifice myself so that the footage can be played, because Daisy can't hack in order to be able to have it play on loop without them being able to stop it. So the main gang leaves. Ward stays behind with a couple of soldiers, and he turns on the thing, and the world now knows the truth. And then later on, there are a couple of people there, and Ward is like, all right, I'm gonna ready for the fight. But it's like, no, they are willing to help us. It's like, okay, good. Ward doesn't die. I'm happy about that. Finally, we have a good Ward. We're not gonna let him die. And that is it. However, then in the post-credit scene, we have the fact that Ivanov has found the location of Daisy and Gemma, so they need to work hard in order to be able to get this done, because they got, what, like a matter of hours, maybe? They might have 2 hours or so before everything goes horribly wrong, because they have to get Fitz back and escape, while also doing all of that before Ada gets her body and has the potential to kill Coulson and the rest of them. So we got a lot on our hands in the last episode of Agents of Hydra. So let's see how long we've been here, because the episode starts off with the fact that we have been here for 10 days, because 10 days ago we went into the framework, and now we're almost out of fuel. We are, we almost have no more power, boys. The plane is about to crash down, and the reason that they were able to detect the plane is because of the fact that we had to disable cloaking in order to be able to conserve some power for the framework, so that we don't kill Daisy and Gemma, you know. Meanwhile, in the framework, Daisy comes to the realization that, well, we may have to leave Fitz behind, because we need to get out of here, and we can't wait that much longer, and Fitz is not on our side. Also, Mac is ready to leave, but he can't leave because we need him in the real world, so that's a little bit of a problem. Also, Coulson tells May the truth about everything, and of course she doesn't believe it, because, yeah, that sounds a little bit insane, but that is what he does. He gives it a shot anyway, and because of all the riots and stuff like that, Hydra has enacted martial law, and Fitz goes over to Radcliffe in order to convince him, and he eventually comes up with the idea of giving him a new life, because yes, Ada did kill him in the real world. However, if you give us the traitors, we'll give you a body, because we made a machine that can make a body thanks to the Darkhold. And then Radcliffe is like, okay, fine, this is where they went, and Radcliffe goes with them. So May and Gemma have a little bit of a conversation where May just mentions that Fitz's dad is in the picture, and Gemma immediately is like, oh, okay, so that's what's wrong with him. So it's his dad. The fact that he's here, that is what the problem is. And she's ready to leave. She goes over to him, which is a big mistake, but whatever, because she goes there, she threatens him to make sure that Fitz comes here, but the dad picks up the phone, tells his son he loves him, and then fights against Gemma and accidentally gets shot by Gemma because he was trying to kill her and all that stuff. So that's gonna cause some pain, and it really is, because later on Fitz arrives with Radcliffe as well, and he sees his father's dead body, and he grabs Radcliffe. He's like, you said this woman loves me. Does this look like a person who loves me? Is this something that a person who loves me would do? Huh? And I'm like, yeah. He turned you into an evil prick, yeah. That is indeed what she would do. So now Fitz is ready to kill Gemma. Meanwhile, the Russians are here and they're attacking the plane on the outside. So I like this a lot because now the tension is really here, because we need to escape, boys. We need to get out of here. We don't have much time. Also, they tell Ada that Fitz is on the mission, and Ada's like, no, tell him to come back to me. And Fitz is like, no, because he's not gonna do it. He goes dark because, you know, he wants revenge against Gemma for killing his dad. So Daisy gets the team, at least the important characters, on the plane, except for Gemma, because she arrives late. Trip is gonna fly the thing. Trip is such a good guy. God, I love Trip, dude. But still, because in fact, he instantly believes her, because like he's here, and then Daisy's like, Trip, and hugs him. It's like, hello, lady I never met before in my life. How are you doing today? And then later on, he's like, so we're dating, right? No. Gemma? No. May? No. Really? My game's not good, apparently, because apparently all the women are taken. Yes, they got, well, it's a little bit difficult for Daisy, but the other ones, yes. Because with Daisy, everyone she loves is dead, kind of. She was in love with Ward until he showed his true colors, and he's dead. She was in love with Lincoln, and he's dead. So, yeah, who knows who the next person is going to be, but I will tell you this, he's dead as well. But they go to the location. Also, Daisy kind of traps Mac by just being like, we have a mission to kill Madam Hydra, and we need you. So they get to the location. However, initially, it was a park with a fountain in it. Yeah, now, she put a molten lava pit over the exit, and it's like, oh boy, so we can't leave, we cannot leave. And at that point, Mac is like, what are you people talking about? And he gets the truth, and he's like, this is insane. And then Hydra arrives. So now it's a fight against Hydra, but Daisy gets the idea of basically parting the sea, you know, using her quaking powers to open up the portal by removing all the lava and stuff like that. And it works. She quakes the back door, and Coulson's like, I'm gonna leave, come with me, May. And he walks over to it. He gets shot, and the next set of Hydra soldiers gets killed. And then Coulson's like, get me through the portal, May, please, get me through the portal. So then Daisy opens up the portal again. Coulson gets thrown through. He wakes up in the real world. He's back, baby. And he's like, come on, May, come on, please. And then May wakes up as well. It's like, yes, she went through as well. Fantastic. Next up, it would be Gemma's turn. However, Fitz is here. And also, Mac has a little bit of a crisis because he sees everything happening. To be honest, I will say this, Daisy should have just lied to him. I will say this, Daisy should have just lied to him, but whatever. Anyway, yeah, Gemma sees Fitz, and Fitz shoots her in the leg, and he's ready to kill her. He's like, tell me that I don't mean anything to you. And then she can't. So then Radcliffe disarms the guard and holds a gun to Fitz, takes the gun, grabs Fitz, and throws him through the portal. Because if you're not going willingly, I will make you. Because Radcliffe never betrayed us. He then says sorry for everything, and that he actually did have good intentions. It's just the execution wasn't really all there. And then Gemma goes through the portal, and then Mac doesn't want to go. A little bit of a problem. Also, May had a little bit of an issue because of the fact that she's like, I killed Mace. I killed Director Mace. I ordered the attack. And now that Fitz is out, he's also like, I killed Agnes and I killed Mace. What have I done? Oh no. Because like all the other people that he killed were just codes, so who cares? Technically, if you rebuild that code, you can bring them back. But like Mace and Agnes are truly dead. They cannot be really remade, you know? They're just dead. So he's having trouble with that. But Mac, like I said, he decides to stay and he leaves. And then Daisy goes through and wakes up as well. So Yo-Yo is not gonna be happy about that one. But you know what? We can't have it all. But now everyone is back for this. And that was basically the series finale of Agents of Hydra. It was overall a good spin-off show. Very entertaining. But now we have to go back to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because we're back in the real world. And also Ada now has a body. And can they put clothes on these people or not? Why can't these bodies be made with some clothes on? Why are they always naked? She has a bathrobe. She walks in. She sees Fitz like, Fitz, I'm real. Because also Coulson chopped off her head with a scalpel. How did he chop off her head with a scalpel? Whatever. But anyway, he killed her technically, but she's able to survive because she has now a new body. And then Fitz like, Ophelia. And it's like, oh boy, we're having an existential crisis over here for Fitz. Because he's like, Ophelia, you're real. And then May is ready to shoot Ada. But then Ada grabs Fitz and teleports away. So now she could just do that. This is gonna be a little bit of a problematic thing. However, next time we will have a return of a great man. Alright, boys, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is officially officially back on the television now that we are done with the little spin-off Agents of Hydra. And Ivanov has no more restrictions. Also, he is taking a bunch of stuff and putting it in the submarine in order to escape. But he has no more restrictions, which means he is going to kill Coulson, because that is what he wants to do. So he comes in, he fights against Coulson and May, and then Coulson uses the shield from his hand in order to cut his face off. However, there are more of him now. There's an army of him, to be exact. And he's all controlling it with his head thing. That I don't know, the thing that his head is in. That I don't know how to explain it, but he's all controlling it from there. Also, Zephyr 1 now has to fight, and we need to make sure to be able to get the power restored to the gun so we can survive, which we do, but they really need to invent bigger cables. However, in my opinion, they should have just broken the wall. That way they could have had more room in order to connect the cables. Just saying, you know, a little bit of an oversight. Also, Yo-Yo isn't happy about the fact that Daisy didn't bring Mac back because of the fact that she loves him. And then Daisy's like, yeah, but it's Hope. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I kind of get it, but I still want him back. I want to go into the machine. And Daisy's like, no, that's not a good idea. So after that, Coulson also gives May a little bit of a catch-up of what happened at the end of the Ghost Rider arc. Just to kind of clear things for her, you know, kind of clear her mind. Because let's be honest here, the last thing she did before being put in the framework was, well, escape. But it was the whole Ghost Rider thing. Fitz and Ada are also on the beach, and Ada made one change in everyone's life except for Fitz, because she made two. Number one was simple, put the dad back in the picture. But number two was she took Gemma's spot at the academy. You know, when Fitz and Simmons met and their love became eternal. Yes, she took that place, which means she became the love that is eternal. But now that we're out of the framework, not anymore. Well, kind of, maybe, I don't know. We're just not gonna talk about this yet, but that's the change that she made to him as well. However, then she teleports him over to another place, because I guess the beach wasn't that well, because Fitz is also still having problems with the fact of everything that he did. Also, we can't touch down because of the fact that we are hunted by Talbot, because once again, we are fugitives, I guess, because they found Mace's body with basically quaked to death, as you could say. And that was what the Rusher was doing to the body when Mace died in the framework. He grabbed the body, he broke all the bones, I guess with a hammer maybe, and then they threw him out onto the beach in order for the people to find him. And it's like, oh, Quake killed him. So yeah, S.H.I.E.L.D is once again a terrorist organization. My goodness, we had about a good 2 months, I'd say, maybe 3 months. I don't know, this takes place from like, I don't know, January until May, I guess. But we had a good couple of time, but sadly enough, it wasn't meant to last, sadly enough. It always goes like this, doesn't it? Also, I've seen people say that this season breaks the MCU timeline, and I don't really see how, because when this is taking place, nothing in the movies is, okay? This takes place after Doctor Strange, which was the last movie we watched, and the next one is Thor Ragnarok. There is nothing in between. So basically, the next actual movie is gonna be Ant-Man and the Wasp, which takes place, you know, in a different place, but also Infinity War. So S.H.I.E.L.D being around doesn't really break the timeline. I'll just say that right now. I saw people say that this series broke the timeline with season 4. No. That was season 5, my friends, that kind of broke the timeline. However, I have a little headcanon for that one, so don't you worry about that one. But we'll get there when we get to season 5, which I don't really think is that. No, that's gonna take a bit to get there, actually. That's we'll get to that next year. I'll tell you that much right now. I'll tell you that for free. We'll get there next year. Maybe in January. Maybe February. I don't know. Also, Ada has not yet learned the emotion called empathy, so Fitz tries to teach her that. Meanwhile, Coulson and May are going to have to fight Ivanov because the Russian superior, or whatever you want to call him, yeah, he has opened the door, so it's time for a fight. Ada is also scared to die. However, Fitz convinces her to focus on the empathy part instead of the dying part. And it's kind of stupid because technically she can't be stopped, as Fitz will yell later on in the episode. So Ada teleports over to Ivanov and tells him to stop. However, she can't control him anymore, so he won't do that stuff. And there's too many of him for her to be able to reasonably take out. And they've blown up the base. So instead, Ada and Fitz, they head over to Mac and save him, which, you know, is kind of out of order because also Coulson and May eventually make it to the top. Daisy's here. However, we can't get Mac because of the whole, you know, drowning part. However, then Ada appears with Fitz and Mac. However, I don't know how he's connected to the framework. You know what? I'm not even gonna question it, okay? This is like Darkhold tech, so I'm not gonna question it. We're just gonna leave it at that. And Gemma then ices both Fitz and Ada, and they wake up in a cell together. Gemma is also afraid And not because of what Fitz had done or who he was in the framework, because Yo-Yo is the one who kind of breaks this down. Gemma's afraid that Fitz loves another woman, that he's lost her. Meanwhile, in the cell, Fitz realizes that he is exactly like Ward, because as you saw in the framework, if Ward at the prison had a good person to bail him out, he would have turned into a good guy. Fitz, having the dad in his life, turned him into a bad guy, so in that sense, he's kind of like Fitz. And also, he thinks he killed his chance with Gemma. However, he can't stop thinking about her, and at this moment, Ada then tries to become close with Fitz, and by the way, Gemma is watching this, and I'm like, Gemma, go inside. Go to Fitz. Because you were kind of pushing him into the arms of another woman. But then Fitz is like, she's the only one that I want. And then we break the bot. Kind of. Not really a bot anymore. But still. You get what I mean. Yeah. Ada breaks. Fully breaks. She starts to scream because she wants Fitz. Okay? She finally gets to choose. And she chose Fitz. And he doesn't choose her. And it's like, yes. Heartbreak. The most powerful of emotions. And worst of emotions. But to be honest, the worse an emotion is, the more powerful it is as well. But yeah, she starts to go insane. So Fitz gets into the container in the cell and locks himself in there. And then he gets pulled out by someone else who I don't remember the name of, who dies later on. Sorry, R.I.P. the boy. Don't know the name, but still R.I.P. the boy. But he pulls him out. And then we learn that teleportation isn't the only power Ada has, because she also has Lincoln's power. So she overrides the whole electricity system in order to break out of her cell. And as she teleports around and starts killing people, because, yeah, okay. That's a normal reaction. Don't worry, I have a fix for you, but I'll tell you that one later, okay? What to do in this kind of situation. What women do in this kind of situation. Look, I don't know what a woman is like because I am not a woman. However, I do know what is best for a woman in a situation like this. I've watched enough movies to get the information. So she basically goes around killing everyone, but then the guy who pulled Fitz out of the cell, he starts shooting at her, and it's like, yay, we killed her, but then Fitz keeps yelling, we can't stop her. So Fitz gets taken away, put into the cell, and it gets loaded onto the Zephyr, and then Fitz is still like, nobody's listening to me. We need to leave. She can't be stopped. And why can't she be stopped? Because she can heal. She doesn't have just shocking powers. She has healing powers as well. Because apparently, what they were doing in the framework with all the Inhumans, with that machine that Fitz was using, was the fact that they were basically taking all of them powers and putting all of them powers into Ada's future body. So now she has all of the powers. She may not be an official Inhuman, but she has all the powers. Also, while all this was happening, Talbot arrived, and he decided to, you know, kind of arrest everyone because they're all robots. But then when Fitz arrives, it's like, hey, you guys can get on or you can leave. And they all decide to leave. But also, they think that because of the fact, like, she's all over the place. He thinks it's Yo-Yo, who is nowhere to be found. Well, Yo-Yo's in the framework looking for Mac. That is gonna be bad. So then Talbot explores the base. He hears the fact that a couple of people are dead, and then he decides to evacuate the base. And just at that moment when he's gone, our Ghost Rider's back. Yep, he comes back from hell, because you really think in the Ghost Rider season he was going to miss the finale? Come on, man. You know, we've had a little bit of a downtime with like CGI, so we can bring Ghost Rider back with the money that we've saved up. So yeah, he's back. And then in the post-credit scene, we see what Yo-Yo's life is like in the framework, and she is tied to, I don't know, she's just tied up. Let's just say that, okay? I don't know what that thing is called. To a stretcher, maybe? She's tied to a stretcher, we'll say that. So that's a bit problematic. I wonder how all this is gonna go, because we have one more episode left to go. Also, Ada, instead of killing the Russian, which I actually found funny, that scene, about the fact that she just kills the Russian, and then he's like, are you done? But anyway, instead of doing that, what a woman needs is a bath, or actually, no. Here you go. Follow these steps. Turn on the shower. Grab a big box of ice cream. Get naked. Go under that shower. Get on your knees. Cry and eat the ice cream. That is at least how I know that women deal with heartbreak. At least that's what TV told me, so maybe it'll work for you, you know? Instead of destroying the world, maybe you should try that one, because she wants to destroy the world. So let's get into that finale. So here we are, boys, at the finale of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4, and it has been a good ride. Speaking of ride, Robbie gets his back from the impound. That's the first thing he does, and he heads over to Ada. Also, the gang is basically every couple of seconds in the Zephyr 1 going up and down to prevent teleportation access. Meanwhile, in the framework, Radcliffe saves Yo-Yo because of the fact that Daisy put a bunch of Yo-Yos in his pocket, and he wanted to know what it meant, and Yo-Yo's here for Mac, which is gonna be a problem. Also, the framework's being destroyed, so that's a double problem. And they got about 12 to 20 hours before before the whole thing goes away. So Ghost Rider finds Ada, he kills a bunch of bots, and then he damages Ada, but she's able to escape. And also, he wants that book. He wants that book very badly, but sadly enough, Ada escapes with it. Also, another problem, if we didn't have many of those already, the world knows about Mace's lie, the fact that he's not an Inhuman, and yeah, that kind of caused the public to think, what else did these people lie about? What else did these people lie about? But Daisy learns that Robbie's back, so we go to pick him up, and also, we learn that Ghost Rider can actually hurt Ada because she can't heal the damage that he inflicted. And that's because of the fact that Ada's made of the same stuff as the Darkhold. And Ghost Rider really hates Ada. So, in the framework, Yo-Yo goes to the secret base with Radcliffe, and she meets Hope, while Radcliffe tries and fails to talk to Mac. So Yo-Yo is like, next time I'm talking to him. Also, things are randomly disappearing. So then there's a meeting, and Ivanov and a Russian friend are gonna be there, which S.H.I.E.L.D. learned the identity of. So S.H.I.E.L.D. goes there to stop the plan, but it doesn't really work. But they talk bad about S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Inhumans and all that stuff. You know, classic Ivanov stuff. However, then a Daisy LMD comes in and shoots Talbot straight in the head. And then Robbie appears and he goes after Daisy. And then we have Coulson and May come in and they try to check up on Talbot. And they basically get the whole story about like, oh, you evil villains, once the video comes out, oh, you'll be in big trouble. So Daisy, the real one, arrives in a room with Ada and another LMD of hers. But then one of the LMDs gets burned by Ghost Rider. And Ada sees Ghost Rider and is instantly like, peace out, because she's terrified of him because he can kill her, as we know. However, thankfully, thanks to this whole terrible thing, we got the Darkhold. Yay! So we go back to the base, and May comes with a horrible realization of the fact that if the video gets out of Daisy shooting Talbot, that's not just gonna look bad for S.H.I.E.L.D. She is an Inhuman. That's gonna be hatred towards Inhumans. And then it's the realization of like, oh, so they're trying to make the framework a reality. But instead of using Bahrain, they're gonna have Daisy kill Talbot, and that is how they're able to put the fear in the people and how, I don't know, anti-Inhuman stuff will rise. So now we need a plan. Problem is, Robbie can kill Ada, but he can't get close to her because of the fact that she's terrified of him. So Coulson has a plan, but we need to go back to base first. Meanwhile, in the framework, on the bus, Yo-Yo tries to talk with Mac, doesn't really work, and then a bridge disappears. And also other stuff disappears, but the bridge disappears. So then Mac is like, we're going home. So everyone goes to Mac's home, where we got an emotional moment where Radcliffe and Yo-Yo are talking about the fact how this world is not real, and sadly enough, Hope overhears that, so that's gonna cause some trouble. So Daisy's busy making an exit, and Fitz and Simmons are trying their best in order to stop the destruction of the framework from happening, but then Ada teleports in here, and she's ready to kill Fitz and, well, make Fitz suffer. That's the one. However, then Gemma tries to stab her, but she also has the Nadir power, so she dodges, gets the thing, and stabs Gemma, and then Fitz is like, Coulson has the book, and he's about to read it. Go to him. And then she goes over to him, but not before shocking Gemma to death. So that's sad. By the way, the acting on Fitz was was bad. I'm sorry. Look, it was good. The actor is a really good actor, but he acted bad. Like, he's supposed to pretend that Gemma's dead, and it's like, he didn't really sell it to me anyway. It was like, dude, you're not really as upset about Gemma being taken as you should be. That's because this was an LMD of Gemma. So Ada goes over to Coulson, and she's like, oh, you really think you can stop me? And then behind her, Gemma just unloads a whole clip in her, and it's like, really, you think that can stop me? And then Coulson walks up to her and is like, no, but this can. And then he turns into Ghost Rider. Yes, Phil Coulson for a brief moment was Ghost Rider, and Ghost Rider grabs her with his chain. She tries to teleport away, but keeps taking him with her, and eventually they get to a different location, and Fitz and Simmons are here as well. And then Ghost Rider burns Ada away, and that's it. We're done. Outside of the fact that the Russian is technically still out there, but I guess that could be a problem for next season, you know? We do have another season, and the last season, to have 22 episodes. So a couple of those episodes, maybe next season, could be dedicated to the Russian in order to take him out once and for all. So now, with everything done, we have a little bit of a small cliffhanger, and that is the fact that apparently Coulson made a deal with Ghost Rider in order for, you know, Ghost Rider to be in his body, and that's gonna be coming more into play in the next season. So Robbie goes back to hell with the Darkhold, and Fitz is like, look, I think I should stay here and atone for my crimes, and then Daisy's like, no, you shouldn't. You should come with us. And then he's like, okay, fine. But first, Coulson suggests we should get something to eat. Meanwhile, in this framework, work. Radcliffe sits there at the beach with a bottle of alcohol and he disappears. He's dead and gone officially. So the gang is at a diner eating some food, and then the lights go out, go back on. There are mystery men behind them, and then Coulson is like, well, that took you long enough, because he thinks obviously it's the government. But then they freeze time somehow, or at least freeze them, and then they're like, all right, take him. So everyone gets taken, and then in the post-credit scene we have Coulson in space, baby. Yes, Coulson is in space for the last 23 episode season. And that's it. That's the end. I made it again to another end of a season. And my goodness, this is my favorite season. And it's not just because of Ghost Rider, which a lot of people will think, because this was technically kind of promoted in the beginning as the Ghost Rider season. But it's not. It's the AI season. I love the storyline of Ghost Rider and Radcliffe and Ada even at the end. I could even kind of relate to Ada. A couple of years ago, I got my heart broken as well. However, Ada, instead of, taking it out on the world, what I did was I put it towards myself. But really, you can't get naked in a shower with a bucket of ice cream. Come on, that's what women do, okay? Just get in a shower naked with a bucket of ice cream, okay? I don't know, sometimes they actually do wear clothes, but I feel like that would just not feel good, wet clothes on your body. It's just better just take it off, And when you're done with a good cry, you can even put some shampoo on it and clean yourself immediately. It's a win-win. But anyway, I love the whole season. This is my favorite season, and to me also the best season of this series. And that's also because of the fact that the next 3 seasons are kind of gonna ruin some stuff. Not all of it, but some stuff. And the stuff that I'm talking about is the timeline stuff. Because while I've seen people say that this season can't connect to the MCU because, I don't know, S.H.I.E.L.D, I guess, became public again, which has no continuity errors with any of the movies because of the fact that the next one is Thor, and then we have Ant-Man, which that's not gonna really matter about S.H.I.E.L.D. And then we got Infinity War and Endgame. And after that, we have the Multiverse Saga. And by the way, I have a little bit of an explanation about that too. And also, they came back for like 2 months, and then they disappeared. Well, I guess this season kind of takes place maybe from January till May, so maybe about 5 months. But still, this season took place over the course of like 5 months or something like that. I don't care. Like, it doesn't really matter that S.H.I.E.L.D. came back and then disappeared again. It feels like people are putting too many things into it. And also, no series is perfect. I mean, there are continuity errors in Captain Marvel as well, but you're gonna just ignore it because it's canon. Nah, I see this as canon as well. But like, this is my favorite season, as I said before already. Also in the review probably a couple of times. But that's because it is, dude. I love Ghost Rider this season. The transformation of him turning Ghost Rider. Also, recently, at the time of me recording this, which is in June of 2025, I actually saw on Twitter that people were talking about the fact of this scene of Coulson going Ghost Rider. And it's like, someone made like a post about the fact that it's like Coulson went Ghost Rider. And then like a lot of people, on my timeline anyway, people I don't even follow, were like, oh, that's not even true. It's like, watch the show, dummy, because it's true. Coulson became Ghost Rider. It's actually funny how that kind of lined up. But overall, this season is great. This season kind of does what the Arrowverse, well, at least the Flash, I guess, tried and failed so horribly to do. And that is have 3 story arcs, each kind of be separate, but still kind of linking together. And also have quality. Because while the Flash did the first part, have 3 storylines that connect, they didn't have quality. This one has quality. And it never loses quality for all the episodes at all. And what I love the most about this as well is the fact that at least once every episode that Robbie is in, we see Ghost Rider. It's not like, in the Inhumans show where it's like, yeah, we're not gonna use the powers, cut off the hair, and also give him a headache. No. Every episode we get to see Ghost Rider at least once. Outside of that, it's a flaming weapon of some kind. But it's the skull that comes throughout. However, I hate what happened after this, but I also kind of understand the cancellation of the Ghost Rider spin-off show that was actually happening. However, that one was also a little bit weird because it wasn't gonna be connected to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that. I don't know. There were weird talks back when that thing was like, I guess in pre-production, and when people started talking about it. It was weird. It wasn't gonna connect, but then it was, but then it wasn't. I don't know. But it's sad that we didn't get it, especially for the actor Gabriel Luna, because of the fact that he was great in the role. But overall, like I said, I love this season. And there's nothing else for me to say because I really need to record a review for this thing because I want to edit and get this bad boy done today. So, let me know what you guys thought about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4 in the comment section down below. Spoiler filled as always. Also, by the way, I very much enjoyed Mace as well, the Patriot. I liked him as well. But let me know what you guys thought about this season in the comment section down below. With that being said, thank you all so very much for watching, and I hope you guys have enjoyed. And if you did, please like button, subscribe if you're new, if not already, turn on notifications. Don't forget to check out the Let's Play channel, link in the description and at the end of the video. And also, this might be the longest spoiler talk ever. However, next time we're going back to Netflix, baby, with the Drunken Girl. Bye!